Welcome back, everyone. Wasn't that a wonderful lunch and then our two performances? Yes, thank you to Little Mexico and to A Todo Folklore and Nefties. Sí, yeah. Panzas llenas y corazones contentos, that's for sure. Some of us have a little bit bigger pancitas, but yeah, and el corazón también. So before we start our second panel, we have one of our students that I had announced earlier, and she's going to be receiving a scholarship, and she's here right now, and her name is Sandy Morales Monzon, and she's in radiologic technology, the Fundación Mexico Mexican American Studies Scholarship. She's a full-time student and is expected to graduate May 2024. So let's give it, Sandy, a round of applause. Picture. Okay, yes, let's get a picture.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to say thank you to the M.F.A Foundation and to everyone helping students like me. I'm a full-time student in the radiology program right now. I graduated in 2016 from the dental assisting program here at PIMA. I work as a dental assistant for 6 years, and now I'm back to school. So leaving work to study again hasn't been easy, so I really want to thank the PIMA Foundation and everyone helping students like me. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. So now I would like to introduce and welcome Dr. Tiffany Amoret Young, Sociology faculty here at Pima College. She's going to come to the stage and introduce our second panel and begin the discussion, and then following with a Q&A. So, Dr. Young.
Thank you, everyone. It's great to be here and to be part of the organization of these type of events. They mean a lot for the community, and I want to thank you for being just such an awesome audience and being engaged. Before we get started, I'm going to talk just a little bit about our sociology classes. Sociology is an amazing discipline that helps students understand not only their lived experiences, but how those lived experiences are informed by things much larger than us, right? Like the economy and politics and history. And it makes sense of our worlds and the world of human groups. And I think that it teaches us empathy, right, when we do it correctly. So if you are interested, we do have Soc 101, an introduction to sociology, but we also have some awesome upper division courses like current social problems, Soc 120. We have Soc 127, relationships, family and marriage, if you want to learn about the contemporary family experience. And of course, we look at these from a lens of equity. We also have Soc 201, race, ethnicity, minority group relations, and social justice, one of my favorite topics. And then, of course, an amazing class, Soc 204, which is gender identities, interactions, and relations. As you may know, these are all really pertinent issues in our society, right? And a lot of our students are receiving a lot of information, and we want them to make sense of that information, right, from an empirical and a humane perspective. And that's what the discipline offers. So if you can, sign up for one of our courses. I will now be introducing our second. Oh. I will when I do my panel, my last panel on sustainability. I will be talking about how I teach environmental sustainability, equity, and social justice through food, right? And that includes seed bombing. And I will share with that later. Thank you, Francisca. And so now for our second panel, Transcending Borderlands, we have quite a few amazing presenters. We're going to start off with Juanita and Alma. Y'all can come on up to the stage, get comfortable. Wherever you would like, yes. Thank you. Right. So we will be starting off with Juanita and Alma. They are going to be sharing with us their presentations on using literacy as a bridge between borders with migrants in Sonora, Mexico. Looking very forward to that. Are you all ready to come up? All right. Give them a big hand. Thank you. Perfect.
Oh, I wanted to start. I taught in Albuquerque for 10 years, and I now work with pre-service teachers. And I had a student ask me, what's one of the most important things you can teach your students? And I said, well, to teach them how to breathe. So it's when you get nervous, like I am now, it's important to take a deep breath. So I'm going to invite you to take a deep breath with me, and we call these lion breaths. So you're going to breathe in really deeply, and then you're going to breathe out with a So we're going to do that together. Ready? Okay. So thank you. So hello everyone. Today we will be presenting Salas con Migrantes, using literacy as a bridge between borders with migrants in Sonora, Mexico. So we are going to start by introducing our team. We organized as a Salas team this past fall as part of a program through the University of Arizona. I am Juanita Sandoval. I am a PhD student in the Teaching, Learning, and Sociocultural Studies program at the University of Arizona. I have been working with migrants in Sonora since 2019. Elizabeth Gaxiola and Florentino Hernandez Cruz are also team members, along with Alma Solar. Elizabeth is a doctoral candidate and started a project, La Casa de Papel, El Ruido de Tus Voces, and creates maker spaces for migrant families for arts-based activities. Florentino was another maestrito de pueblo who enjoyed walking in indigenous cultures and accepting their realities. He worked with immigrant students in his native Oaxaca state, and this is how he became involved in immigration issues. And Alma has been working in migrant shelters for 10 years and giving humanitarian aid along the border. And last December, she completed her ethnic, gender, transborder, and sociology studies at Pima. So, woo! So we will begin by explaining what salas are, and then we'll talk about our own project, Salas de la Lectura con Migrantes. So what are salas? Salas de Lectura literally means living room of literacy. This project was first started in Mexico. Salas was founded to establish a derecho cultural al libro y a la lectura. So the cultural right to books and literacy, the idea that literacy is a human right. The key principles of Salas de Lectura are freedom, equality, autonomy, and inclusion. Participants from all backgrounds are welcome to participate voluntarily as equals, and there is choice in what they read. Salas are created on curated selections of literature based on a theme, and reading mediators, or mediadores as we're called, support participants to engage with literature as a way of understanding oneself and others as a role as citizens. The focus is on choice, with members selecting different books to read within a broad theme, so it's different from a book group in that there's multiple different texts to pick from, and this allows for intergenerational groups. So in Mexico, the Salas de Lecturas program has been in existence for over 20 years in both urban and rural spaces, and there have been 6,000 salas reaching 8 million readers each year. So this is a very impactful program. And salas are spaces where communities are created and sustained through storytelling. So just a little bit about the structure of the meeting. So a salas meeting usually consists of an initial welcoming activity, and then we have a quick and enjoyable experience about a short text. Then we dialogue about that text, we share and have a conversation. Then we allow participants to read. So we bring text to the salas, different books, different kinds of literature. and participants are invited to just sit and read and enjoy. And then we have a final share out and conversation about the book choice. And something that we do in our Salas de Migrantes is we end with a fun game or wellness type activity. And Alma's going to talk a little bit more about Sonora in general.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the Salas con Migrantes in Nogales, Sonora. When our group of Salas, Liz, Florentino, Juanita, and I decided to take the training Salas de Libros Mediators, our vision was to work with migrants. We knew that literacy and literature will be a great help to the migrant population. The work that we had done with migrants presented us with a very positive outlook. It was a great pleasure to start our first Salas, a keynote border initiative, better known as El Comedor, which is located on the border of Nogales, Sonora. Keynote Center has assisted migrants for over 10 years. Before the pandemic, the population that they assisted with migrants deported after attempting to cross the border through the desert, and migrants deported from detention centers, mostly from Eloy and Florence. Now, the increase of asylum seekers from many countries such as Venezuela, Cameroon, Honduras has increased dramatically. This shelter provides the security and comfort to hold our Salas gatherings with migrants, asylum seekers, and deportees. To be able to provide hope and empowerment through reading has filled us with great satisfaction. Now I would like to talk about the migrant crisis in Sonora. The migrant crisis at the border has suffered before, during the pandemic, and at the present time. The Migrant Protection Protocol, MPP, better known as Stay in Mexico, was a program implemented at the beginning of 2019 by the previous U.S. administration. This program required asylum seekers to remain in Mexico while waiting for the cases to be pending in a U.S. court. In the following year, in March 2020, the Department of Health and Human Services issued an emergency rule allowing the Center for Disease Control to enforce Title 42. Title 42 is one of the border restrictions between Mexico and the United States implemented to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Under this public health measure, the United States expels people to Mexico or their countries of origin. Although the borders are now open, Title 42 remains in effect for migrants and asylum seekers. What is the purpose of our project? We, the Salas team, have seen the great need for improvement in the lives of migrants and asylum seekers during their stay in the border shelters. That is why we have taken the Salas program to the migrant shelter as a way to bring improvement in their lives through reading and uplifting through literacy. The community living to which these people are accustomed is the main motto of Salas. Community living and reading go hand in hand to reaffirm and enhance human dignity.
So now I'm going to talk about literacy and migration and why literacy is important to migrant communities. Whoops. So prior to migration, conditions like poverty in communities often drive children to drop out of school. In some rural communities, secondary education is not readily accessible. Before migrating, many children and adults have had their access to school interrupted or rendered dangerous by organized violence. Migration in itself interrupts access to schooling, healthcare, and other basic necessities and causes stress and uncertainty to the migrant community. So why do salas as community making matter? To create consciousness and a deeper understanding of border issues, to support mental health and well-being by creating safe spaces for migrants to enjoy literacy and literacy practices. This creates an opportunity for dialogue, to share and relate to one another. Often our themes are based on issues that the migrants are experiencing. We want to foster community engagement, support binational collaboration, and most importantly, promote joy and imagination, even in the most difficult of circumstances, and to support dreams and hope. So our collective vision as a team, we want to promote, this is what Tino says, and we have Tino. Tino, raise your hand. There he is. Tino says, promote well-being in sensitive spaces, to dream and evoke joyful moments through reading. Liz, where's Liz? Raise your hand. There she is. That every person have access and the opportunity to the world of literature. I say to create spaces where literacy can be accessible, joyful, and empowering, where through dialogue and collaboration practices, participants can imagine and promote a more just and equitable future. And Alma says, it is of great importance to lead the reader to discover an indestructible dignity through literacy empowerment. So our future plans, we hope to continue our work, especially at Salas, at the Keynote Border Initiative. We hope to have this be ongoing and monthly. We would like to start Salas in other migrant communities throughout Sonora and maybe even potentially beyond. We are in the process of curating a collection of books in Spanish, quality literature in Spanish based on themes that are relevant to migrants. We are trying to develop themes and activities that are relevant to migrant communities. We are hoping to receive grant funding to train and continue Salas for a Spanish-speaking cohort of mediators who can assist us with this work. And we are in the process of applying for grants and funding for books, supplies, travel, and etc. So, if you're interested in more information about Salas de Lectura at the University of Arizona, we have our email on here. We do hope to start a Spanish cohort soon, so you can please email the email on the slide, and hopefully we can get this going. We want to give a shout out to the many organizations, I know this is not all of them, in the surrounding area who do work to aid and support migrant communities. This work is not possible without everyone working together as a village. And so, gracias. This is us on our way to Kino a few weeks back. We had a blast. It was so much fun. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Juanita and Alma, for transcending borders and bringing the power of story to probably people who need it the most, right? So thank you. I would like now, we're going to be introducing Rebecca Murillo. She is going to be presenting on bilingual curriculums in our community, building inclusivity. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Murillo, for those I have not said hi to. So today I'll be talking about bilingual curriculums and building inclusivity within our communities and what that kind of looks like. So just like a little background of myself, I grew up, born and raised in Nogales, Arizona. I like to add Nogales, Sonora, because I always say they're like a two-in-one. The border life is so much fun. It's walking distance, so I love putting that I'm from both. I'm currently a senior at the University of Arizona. I'm studying literacy, learning, and leadership. Now it's called leadership, learning, and innovations. I'm also have a minor in Spanish, and I'm also dual enrolled in the Accelerated Master's Program for Educational Psychology, So currently as a senior, I'm taking graduate classes while finishing my undergrad, so double dipping, and then I'll graduate this May, and then come back and finish off my master's, and then hopefully get a job. So why specifically this work of building inclusivity within our community? It basically stemmed from when I was younger. I really felt the need for inclusive informal environmental settings. For example, like when I would go to a nonprofit or an after-school activity, I wish there was more bilingual curriculums. I wish there was more opportunities for students who spoke Spanish. And I think growing up, I just really felt that disconnect, and it motivated me to go out there and do it myself, and in hopes that I can inspire others, but also bring that awareness and feel like wonderful for those children who are now growing up in this new generation, for them to have opportunities, be bilingual, and feel that they're included. I think it's important. So I really enjoy the work that I do because it stems from, you know, what I wish I would have had as a younger child, but now I get to do it for other children. So I have a video of it. The video is like 2 minutes long, but it's a quick video on basically me explaining on one of the internships that I had here in Tucson. So our major, and Dr. Crystal Soltero is here. She's our director. So if you guys haven't met her, said hi. You want to raise your hand, Crystal? So she's here. You can ask her any questions. So basically this major is really important because it's very broad. You kind of pick and choose what you like. You get to explore through internships. So it's an internship kind of based major. So to kind of understand where you want to go into where you fit, you kind of have to explore. And Dr. Crystal Soltero makes us know, like, hey, these are other opportunities that they're out there for you. And we create this newsletter for our students. And we send it out with internship opportunities. So you get to explore, you go into a field, you like it or not, you get to explore and figure out what you like, which is really important. And, you know, it's better to start off and explore something than not like it later on. So this video is me doing my work at the Children's Museum here in Tucson, and I'll talk more about it after the video, specifically what I did. But yeah, we can play the video. No, you're all good. Well, just a rundown, I can start talking about what the internship kind of looked like. So my internship at the Children's Museum here in Tucson focused on building their bilingual curriculum and their program. So I worked, and it was amazing as a, you know, junior. Going into my junior year, I worked at the museum, and I got the opportunity to create this program for them. It was non-existing. They were kind of in between if they did it or not, and so I helped kind of stem it, and we said we were going to do bilingual story times for the younger kids. So we went out there. There's not a lot of books out there that are bilingual, and especially not for younger children. Now we see more inclusive books, but I had to translate books. I had to manually translate them and read to the children, and there was children from all types of ethnicities, of experiences, and everyone sat down and really wanted to learn more about my experiences, my lived experiences, what the book is talking about. So everyone was interested, even at a young age, kind of to learn about the different opportunities that they have. They wanted to learn Spanish, so I would go back and forth, like, this is how you say this word in Spanish, and they were very interested, and they kept asking me different questions. We also had some science nights that I was a part of, and I got to also translate all their materials to Spanish, which was very, very eye-opening for my workplace, and I got the opportunity to really dig deep into it, and I realized that there was really a need for more bilingual opportunities. I also worked with the summer camps, so they have summer camps, and I was there, and I was basically like an aide, but I helped with all the bilingual students who, needed a support system. So I was kind of there to answer any questions that they had and feel like they could connect and talk to me. So we can play the video.
At the Children's Museum Tucson. I'm doing many things. One of those things is the bilingual program. I do bilingual story time. I teach children in English and Spanish. A parade is desfile in Spanish. I also help with the summer camps here, and I've just learned so much about what I could potentially do. The bilingual programming, I would like to continue that, and I'm learning every day something new. I'm helping in the camp, and something always happens. You know how to manage a situation better, or you learn how to work in a field like this. We just have a lot of say in this, and I think that has made me become in a leadership role. I feel like I grew confidence also in myself to be in that leadership position. I learn about different communities every day, thus being with my coworkers or like the children who visit the museum. They teach us something every day, and also I get to teach them in an informal setting, in an informal learning. It's so important to let the children be children and just grow. Everything that I've learned that represents literacy, I thought it was just, reading, writing, and now I know it's so much more. It's like each literacy is defined by the you, and here I got to define that even more through, the bilingual program, getting to share my literacy with other people. I think it's a great opportunity that I can get credit for this because I've learned so much and I've applied so many things that I've already learned. Really enjoyed being a part of what I potentially would want to do as a future career, and that made me grow as an individual and as a student.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Perfect. So, quickly, I want to also mention some of the other programs that I worked with at the museum. I also did videos for their Facebook, so I read fully in Spanish, and we posted those on Facebook so we could reach people all over the world, not just people who were able to visit the museum. So we posted all those videos. I had my tripod and was recording, reading videos fully in Spanish for the children. And I did a couple of those. I mentioned we did science, so they're like family brain boosts, so it was like family events, and I did that programming in Spanish. We did the We Play, which is the story time that I read to younger children, bilingual. And then Discovery Nights were the nights that the museum was open a little longer, and I was able to bring in those, bilingual curriculums to all types of families, especially those family members who aren't, around during like the mornings or kind of get off work later. And so they were able to kind of enjoy that too, which I really enjoyed. So moving on, I want to talk about my other internship. So I worked with Watershed Management Group. There are also a nonprofit that teaches the community all about sustainability and how to, be more environmental friendly, and it was something new for me. I had no experience with, environmental things, and it was really a learning experience for myself, and I really appreciated it. So I got to be their bilingual education intern. So again, I got to go in and create the bilingual programs. They started something called a Family Saturdays. So it was Sábados Familiares, and so it was every first Saturday of the month we got to throw on this big event, and we had spent the whole month prior planning. So it was, okay, what are we gonna do for this month? Let's start planning translating and moving along. So every time it was a new theme, it was something new. Like for example, we did tippy taps, and that's the top. So we taught the community how to build their own tippy taps with resources you have at home. And we did all the programming bilingually, and I helped translate everything. And I also created all the worksheets, all the materials in both English and Spanish. And that's me. We had these really cool shirts that said Monsoon Squad because we were really excited that it was monsoon season. And I just learned a lot. I got to learn how to compost. We did like composting toilets. It was fun just to try something new out of my comfort zone. I learned how to make a tippy tap. I chased chickens around. I collected eggs. It was a lot of fun, and I got to create that on like a monthly basis, working at like the living lab, but I also got to go in and create this program for the next month. So we had a wonderful team, and we spent literally weeks and weeks prepping till we had our event. Which was really good. We also did outreach events, so we went to local libraries and just kind of were like, hey, inviting everyone to join us. We went to Hono Chul, and we had a booth there. We were like, hey, this is what Watershed Management Group is, and we kind of taught them, what we do, and invited them to our Family Saturdays, which resulted in more people coming. Since it's a smaller nonprofit, people didn't really know about it. So it was exciting that I also got to do outreach events, and I was standing there talking to all types of students and parents, and it was wonderful. I really appreciated the opportunity. So next, I want to talk about like what is meaningful participation and why I'm so passionate about bilingual curriculums in general. Well, meaningful participation is all about inclusivity for all students to feel submerged in the material that they're learning or the activity that they're in, that they're able to really see themselves actually presented and able to actually do this type of activity, or it's so much, and it's really important to have this meaningful participation, because without it, if we don't see ourselves in the textbooks, if we don't see a leader up here making change, our generations are never going to have a voice. It's going to be overwhelming, and it's just going to go backwards. So having meaningful participation means many things, but mostly so we can encourage everyone, the younger generations, to go out there and that they do have a voice and they can actually make a change. Even as an undergrad, you can go out there, make the change that you want to see happen. And that's what meaningful participation is. It's getting everyone inclusive opportunities for everything. And that's what I kind of strived to do, and which is why I decided to go into a leadership major, because I want to see that change. I want to be that change for, something that I didn't have growing up, and I wish, for the future generations to come, that they have more inclusive opportunities and more meaningful participations, that being in school or in a nonprofit. So again, like importance stems from, being that voice, being that, motivational leader, being that voice for these kids who are watching you. It's important to go out there and be that change so students can really look up to you and say, hey, she's first generation Mexican American. She got her degree. She went out and, did change for us. And I want to invite you all to, chase your dreams and really, despite the struggles and the setbacks, get out there. And that's why it's important to really reach into our community, because if we don't change the way our community is built right now, then it's always going to stay the same way. So if we work together and making it a more positive, more inclusive, friendly experience, then our generations to come are going to have the best time. And it's really crucial for all of us to get involved and go out there and be involved in our community. And lastly, I want to end with what you can do. Of course, you all do so much already, so I want to just leave you with something. Despite the setbacks, despite, you're feeling like, hey, I'm not being heard, nothing's really happening. I feel like this is kind of like a complete waste of time. I want to invite you to not give up, because despite the setbacks, those are the things that motivate other people to, hey, she didn't give up. Everyone's, keep going, because at the end of the day, when we succeed, it's all because we didn't give up. So I want to invite you guys to keep on doing everything you can. Don't give up. Keep being the change that you want to see happen, because it all starts with us. So, thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for being both a practitioner and builder of community and inclusivity on the border. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Next up, we're going to have Jacqueline Arias, and she's going to share with us the soundscapes of Nogales. I think what a soundscape is, but I think I'm going to learn today, and I'm really excited about it. Let's give her a warm welcome.
And I was thinking the panel might want to move their chairs, because I'm going to be presenting a 10-minute video, and I don't want you to hurt your necks. Okay, so I'm honored to be here to talk about my video art piece. And so I'm getting my M.F.A. right now at the University of Arizona, and I'm in the interdisciplinary studies program, which means I do a little bit of everything. I work in video, I work in sound now, I do sculpture, printmaking, but my background is photography. So I received a grant from the Confluence Center of Creative Inquiry at the University of Arizona to do research about the borderlands and produce a creative project that speaks to these experiences. I spent a lot of time in Nogales, Arizona, and I met a vibrant group of musicians and artists who inspired me to create this project about their perspectives. So what you're going to hear are field recordings that I made in the area. I collected while I was there, and you're going to hear the voice of Priscilla Neftis, and I'm so glad that all of you became familiar with her work. She is a rapper, a poet, and an activist, and you're also going to hear a really special welcome and blessing that was given to me for my art practice. So it's called Soundscapes of Nogales. It's about a 10-minute long video. This is the description. Every day, the voices and the music of the people of Nogales, Arizona, circumvent the constraints of the wall. Soundscapes of Nogales explores the orality of space in the community of Nogales, questioning how borders shape sounds, our world, and experiences. I'm asking questions like, how does sound shape our world? And how does it transform? And how does the border wall transform these sounds? I see the hills, the earth, and the winds of Nogales as places that carry the voices of the people high above the wall, and they participate in a defiant act against a physical systemic obstruction. So I see that this video and sound piece is a work that recounts this act of resistance. So tell me about this area here.
Yeah, and you can park in front of the mural there.
Okay.
So this is where everyone comes through by foot. The other crossing is it's not open all the time. But yeah, this is like the place where people see by or walk home.
si no sale muy bien, hay que abrirlo y luego echarle y después lo voy a cerrar.
Muy bien, así es suficiente.
Y luego lo voy a sacudir.
Ten cuidado. The sounds travel through the hills, separated by the borderline. Like people, some echo and some never come back. These mountains guard experiences that will never be told. Some are secrets that everybody knows. Many are memories we act as if we don't remember, like those cheesy regional songs ingrained in our heads since we were younger. The long wait to cross messes with our mental and physical health. Too long sitting makes our bodies stiff, stuck. It's best to go with plenty of time and some good tunes to play, like my grandpa used to say. That way, when it's your turn with the agent, you'll keep calm instead of exploding like a bomb. Because it is triggering for us locals when they ask where you're going and where you're coming from. Like if this was not the same land just divided by a huge steel fence scarring the earth. And as much as they want to stop us from coming and going, it's impossible. Just like sound can only be masked, but not completely silenced.
Uy, pero lo que sí, se me olvidó abrirlo. Listo.
¿Qué más?
Ah, también hay que hacer una rica pizza.
Una pizza.
Sí, hay que
¿Con
hacer.
qué? ¿Con cheese?
Sí.
Cheese pizza, slices. Y la masa la vamos a amasar así. Como una bolita.
Aplanala. Aquí hay que poner.
Sometimes not even for something that big, like a party. You know, sometimes it's just the time being, or having a cookout, or going to the store together. The little things is what really the line erases.
Whatever I am doing, okay?
Nuestro corazón tiene memoria, nuestra mente, nuestro ADN. Ella nació nació en Costa Rica, creció un poquito en Panamá y se fue a Ohio.
In her blood and her body, her grandparents have left an impression that has brought her here, that has brought her on this journey.
Y esto es simplemente una señal de que para nuestros ancestros, para nuestra cultura y nuestras raíces no hay fronteras.
And this is a signal that there are no borders in our culture and our roots.
Thank you, and thank you, Nefties.
All right, thank you very much, Jacqueline. I think I now have a better understanding of soundscapes. I liked the capturing of the social. Thank you so much for that. I would now like to welcome Verlin Jose. We're very happy that you could make it with us today, and he will be presenting on No Borders, No Walls. Thank you.
Where's the timer? So I need to watch the timer. Right there, okay. Bugoy, Skook Damju, Anya Jigit, Werlin Jose, Anya Don Autumn, Amjik Cook, Jugut Cook Juction, Don Autumn Majuit, Magak Sonora Jewett. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Verlin Jose. I come from a community called Tecolote in the Chugutko district in the Don Autumn Nation. I also come from a place that they call Sonora, Paso Verde, Sadek, El Bajío. I come from many different places. My roots come from many different places. So my topic today is no borders, no walls. It's because when you talk about community making, what is community making? I don't know. I've been Googling that, trying to figure that out. But I believe it's what we're doing today. You are the community. You are the ones that are going to make it. We are the ones that are going to make it. I always tell people that if you're in this work to make a name of yourself, you're in the wrong business. Because you don't need to have a title. You don't need to have a job description. You do what's in your heart. You do what you've been taught to do. Do what you feel is the right thing to do. That's why it's called no borders, no walls. In our traditional culture, we don't even have a word for wall. We don't even know how to call a wall. You know, a line we could call this a jukshan. It's a line in the sand, a line in the dirt. That's about as far as we can get to some kind of barrier, I guess, or hugamo, kukyamo, that thing that is standing in front of you. So, I've been serving the people for as long as I can remember. over half a century. In 2019, I thought I was too young to retire. I'm still too young to retire. But I thought I was going to give up my political career in serving the people and go to the ranch and work the cattle and the horses and go to the rodeos and support my family, my nieces and nephews and everything, my grandchildren. But that didn't happen very long. 3 days later, I was appointed traditional governor of the Alta, Mexico. I have sat on many boards and organizations before, but I started to get involved in a nonprofit organization. And I can tell you, one of the best moments in my life, in my career, is working for nonprofit organizations. And many times, there are a lot of great nonprofit organizations out there, but it's true, the boots on the ground, the people behind them. People always say, hey, thank you, Verlin, thank you for doing this. It's not me. There's a whole team behind it. There's a whole team that needs to be recognized. And we're not here about recognition, we're about doing the work that we need to do. Whether that's delivering medical equipment, whether that's delivering food during a pandemic, whether that's giving somebody a cup of water, or whether that's giving somebody a shelter, whatever it is. You know, there are many challenges that we have today, but you know what? I can always say one thing. If my Creator has blessed me to do this, then I will do what I need to do. And it's difficult in this times and ages because we do have borders, we do have barriers, we do have walls. We have this thing that are called laws, right? And laws are not written in stone, but they're meant to be rewritten if we really want to serve humanity. And so people always ask me, Verlin, you talk about the issues on the border. What would you do to solve the border issues? I said, there are probably two major things that I would do if I had a magic wand. Number one, I wave this magic wand and have America kick its drug habit. Because wherever there's a demand, there's going to be a supply. That's just one issue. The second issue I would raise and would create this thing called immigration reform. What is immigration reform? We've been working on that forever, you know. And so because I only have 15 minutes, this discussion takes another 15 hours to talk about, so we won't talk about that now. But if we look at those two things, we can really do things in our communities because right now, I'm walking with a cane. In October 2020, I dropped the hospital bed on my foot trying to hand it over the border fence. And it slipped and it fell on my foot. And I kept walking, and I kept moving till my leg swelled up. And then I ended up having a surgery and 2 surgeries, and I didn't walk for about a year. But I can tell you, my heart was still there. I say we because it wasn't only me. It was my family that was behind me. It was community members that were behind me. It was a whole coordinated team that during the pandemic, one of the toughest times in America, when, God forbid, this ever to happen again, you know, we were losing a lot of people. But the boots on the ground, the people making the community never, ever stopped. Matter of fact, they just stepped up their game. And I was fortunate to be a part of that. So I ended up in the hospital, and one of the things after I had surgery, I told the doctor, do not cut my foot off. Please do not cut my foot off. I said, I love to dance, so don't cut my foot off. I don't know how to dance, I tried it. But when I was after the surgery, and I went back to another surgery, my heart was still there, and I felt for everybody. I would tell the nurses, I got a call with FEMA. I got to coordinate truckloads coming from the East Coast. Give me a brush, give me a shirt, move me away from all these gadgets behind me and put me like next to the window, make me look in a nice place so I could have these meetings. It never stopped. It never stopped because our work is never done. Our work is never done. We only live another day to do these types of work. So when we talk about community making, it really is about a holistic approach on that. And to overcome those barriers, to overcome those obstacles, to overcome those borders and those walls, it takes the whole of us to do that. Not just me and I always tell from the receptionist to the organization that takes the calls, to the person that faxes the financials, to the boots in the warehouse, to load up the equipment, or to provide the food, or the organizations that we work with, we were trucking loads, a lot of food to Mexico, because that's where our land, our traditional lands start about Hermosillo, Sonora, all the way to Phoenix, Arizona. From the San Pedro River on the east to the Rio Colorado and the Sea of Cortez. That's our Aboriginal land. We never once said that our lands are either or. That is our original lands. They call me a U.S. citizen. They call me a Mexican citizen. I do have a Mexican citizen. I do vote in Mexico. I do vote in the U.S. But first and foremost, I am Tohono-O'odham, and I cannot change that. And the Tohono-O'odham, in the history books, people say, why are there not a lot of books written about the Tohono-O'odham? And I used to tell the kids, well, I guess that we weren't that exciting, man. We didn't have war raids, and we didn't go on war parties and scalp people and all that other stuff. I don't know. Believe me, we did. I mean, well, we didn't scalp people. Well, wait, I think we did. Well, I'm not going to talk about that one right there. No, we did do that. Our last war party, actually, documented war party, came out of my community. But we were very humble people. We were people with open arms. And when people came to us and they looked different and they talked different, we didn't say, hey, who are you? Let me see your passport. Let me see your... We said, come on in. Have something to eat. Have something to drink. My son will say it best. My son will say it best. He was a teacher in a high school, and I told him, what are you teaching in the 500 years of history of the O'odham? He said, we accepted the church, and then we fought the church. We accepted the church again, then we burned down the churches, and then we accepted the church again. That is about community making. It's about respect. It's about respect and trusting in one, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what you look like, no matter how you speak. It's about trusting each other to get the work done, whatever it is that's in front of us. And I can tell you that works. That works because I wouldn't be standing here before you. Everything I needed for my recovery, I got from a nonprofit organization because my insurance took too long. It took me 4 weeks to get a wheelchair. I got a wheelchair the next day that they were going to let me out of the hospital, but they couldn't let me out unless I had a wheelchair. And so they said, we put it in for insurance. You know what? People need these things. Here in America, here in Tucson, they throw away these things. Nonprofit organizations capture these things, and we give them to people that need them, not for a cost. It doesn't matter if you have a lot of money or you don't have a lot of money. If you need it, we have it. We will provide it. I'm glad to partner with PEP, Portable Practical Education Preparedness. We just celebrated about 55 years, I think, in existence. You ever go to their website, there's a lot of good information there. But PSMA, PEP Southwest Medical Aid, which used to be a part of World Care, they're the ones who coordinate all this medical equipment. And I just delivered, a whole trailer load to a hospital in Puerto Peñasco. And it's because not only our people at Tohono-O'odham, but it's because the people, there is a need out there. I can't do it alone. It's a whole team, My truck broke down. I got trouble trying here because my radiator went out. And that was the newer truck of our personal family fleet. And now I think we need to think about well, I still have a horse at home, so it took me a couple of days to get here. But I want to talk about no borders, no walls. I want to tell you, I'm preaching to the choir here. Everything that everybody's done here, I think we need to have these spaces in order to have this communication and collaboration about what we can do. Learn from best practices, learn from each other, because we're already doing it. Sometimes I think we kind of have these vision blinders right here that we're not kind of reaching out to this side or that side and how we bring these things together. And thank you for the opportunity, Pima Community College and the organization here that put this together, because we need to have these discussions. We need to take time out to have these true discussions. And we can talk about these things all day, but I think if we start the discussion now, let's not stop the discussion. Let's continue the discussion. Because you know what? Our people, humanity, is too important for us to forget about. The person in the most remotest community out there, or whether it's downtown Tucson, Arizona, Los Angeles, California, Chicago, Phoenix, or wherever, they matter. People matter. And it's upon us to take on that human responsibility to provide for what we can provide for. With or without a child, with or without money, because there are ways that can do it. There are ways that we can do it. This is an educational institution. I'm sure and hoping that they're teaching you how to find those ways, because you guys are the thinkers of this. You know, I only went to Princeton, but it was just for a day. My colleague said I went to Harvard, but that was for 2 hours. I actually am a product of Pima Community College. I didn't finish my bachelor's because I got involved in this thing called politics, and then that's 20 years ago. So I joke with my son saying, I'm still going to go back. I'm going to go back to law school, and you're going to be pushing me around the campus in a wheelchair if it takes me that to get my degree. But it's about working together. And I'm going to leave you with this because there's so much. I wanted to prepare a slideshow. We got 15 minutes. But I would tell you this, always open to discussion, always open. In order for you to truly understand these things, it's not, I mean, today a couple weeks ago, gave somebody a tour of our border. 65 miles to throw out the nation, we do not have a human wall. We will not have a human wall. We will not stand for that. We have 3 traditional crossings that we use regularly. Walk through it, drive through it if we need to, however it is, because our people do not deserve to be divided, regardless. Whether that's food, medical, we cross daily for domestic purposes, ceremonial purposes, religious purposes, and the day that we stop doing those things is the day that the world will cease to exist. And that's what the elders tell us. So it's upon us, it's upon you, community makers, to continue this best practice and do what you need to do. And if we ever feel that we can't do it anymore, I think we could reach out to one another and figure out how we're going to get the job done. Joshua Simhoy, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
All right, I want to thank all of our panelists for contributing to being community makers and for sharing what you're doing. Otherwise, we may not know about all of the awesome work that not only that you're doing, but that each other are doing, right? So I hope that we, again, continue to make connections. I will now, of course, open it up for Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, I encourage you to come up to this wonderful mic, or perhaps somebody will take a mic. Yeah? All right, Liz is going to be helpful. Any questions or comments for our panelists today?
I'm gonna wear shorts tomorrow because I have so many muscles in my legs.
Buenas tardes. Just want to give my gratitude for all the work and what we are learning and hearing, and confirmation of not giving up, persistence, and honoring each other. So thank you very much. And that we have the honor of the Atam, the Yaqui, to be here to remind us that we are on native lands. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
This is how I stare at my students also.
So it's more of a comment for the Children's Museum. So I have 2 little grandkids, and I take them to the Children's Museum. And I was in awe, like, I was maybe a year ago, and I'm like, there's Spanish, there's books in Spanish. And it was like, I didn't think deep as far as like, I just thought whoever works here is like spot on. This was great. I was really surprised. Unfortunately, I was like, this is amazing. So we sat there and literally just read books with the grandkids. And then when you said that, I'm like, there you go. It came from somewhere, but at that moment, I didn't take the time to think of the commitment and the investment it took from someone to make that happen. So thank you. So.
Other questions?
Verlan, this is a question for you. I had never heard that before, that in Tohono O'odham, that there is no word for wall. So how do you, I mean, the fact is that it exists, and it's a torture of, it's an instrument of torture for so many people. How do you look at it then? I mean, you said it was that thing that stands in front of us. Yeah, I'm just really fascinated by the fact that there's no word in your culture for wall.
Oh, I mean, yes. So in the Gaston Purchase, which created the international boundary where it is today, what we call that is the corte. Corte is basically a fence like mercado or what have you. It's a corte. So corte, that's the fence line. That's all we would acknowledge the border. Growing up, I never even knew that I was going into a foreign country with my father. We would just go to grandma's house or wherever and show up, and I didn't know that I was in Mexico. I didn't know that. So that's all we knew it as. So the way we look at it right now, it's an invisible line. It's an invisible line, and our grandparents, our elders tell us that there ain't no wall that's gonna ever stop us. It may physically impede us for the moment, but a wall, a physical wall, cannot stop our prayers. And so that's how we look at it. And literally there is no. A lot of our language right now, some people might disagree with me, but my family, we come up from a traditional background. I believe it's called contemporary Tohono O'odham, because we're descriptive, and then there's a lot of Mexican influence into our language. I go to Mexico a lot. I don't even speak Mexican. I should, because our language is the same. Comida is probably the best word I can tell you. Can't you tell? Get up by la. No, I was kidding. So these words we adapt. And so there is no word for wall, because the day we start acknowledging that there is a wall, we start to acknowledge that there is a wall, is the day that we forget who we are and that there are no walls. Even in our historical, if you look at our archaeological finding, we didn't have 4 walls. We had round houses. We had pit houses, because the shape of Mother Earth, the shape of the world, and there's a whole history to why we lived the way we lived. And we were never intended to be physically bound by barriers and walls. I hope that answers your question. But we can have much more discussion if you want to on that.
Any other questions or just comments of affirmation? Those are always nice. I'm appreciating those. You can tell this isn't an academic audience that's tearing you apart, right? Here we're showing love. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So this question is for Jacqueline. I'm reading your bio here that you were born in Costa Rica and you were raised in Southern Ohio. So I'm a bit perplexed as to how you would find it interesting to go to Nogales and find the soundscapes of Nogales. I'm born and raised there, so I want to know what you see that maybe I didn't. Thank you.
Yeah, it could be the tacos. I was adopted from Costa Rica, and then I lived in Panama for 3 years, and then I was raised in Ohio, and my brother and I were adopted together, so we were the only Latino in Southern Ohio. I'd never met another Latino. So I have been raised knowing what it's like to be marginalized, like the outsider, and knowing what it's like when people create invisible boundaries, and create barriers for you. And so I've had to really struggle a lot of my life to overcome these things. And so when I got this grant from the Confluence Center, I met a lot of people that were working on the border and doing really amazing work supporting migrants. And then I, it was like, it was amazing. I met one person who introduced me to another person, and I found out about the Hilltop Gallery, and they offered me a solo show. I had my first solo show there, and during that experience, I met NFTs, and I met this a community of musicians and artists, and it was so vibrant, and the space is beautiful. And that's what I really fell in love with, and how welcoming everyone was to me and to my practice.
We still have time.
Hi there. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and bringing awareness and doing the work that you're doing. This has been such an enlightening day so far. I try to learn more every day. So my follow-up question is related also to Jacqueline's work. I'm born and raised here in Tucson, and those soundscapes brought memories. You know, I was closing my eyes and I could hear hanging out in my own backyard and hearing the environment, the neighborhood, even here in Tucson. That ephemera of culture, the sounds that we take for granted, is really so important. So my question for you is, where do you see your soundscapes being incorporated? Like, is there a place, wouldn't it be great if instead of elevator music, we had the cultural, environmental music kind of thing?
Yeah, I love that idea. So I was just a part of a sound symposium on Tuesday, and that was really interesting at the University of Arizona, and the English department put it together, and I was able to hear other people's ideas of what sound and noise is, and sometimes it's musical, sometimes it's our voices, and sometimes it's just tone. So I presented that piece just with the sound, without any visuals, and I like the idea of putting it online so that people can just hear that. And I feel like this is like a small chapter in a larger piece. I kind of want to go to Sonora and capture those sounds as well and build upon the project. But my first experience with sound is watching this movie called Playtime by Jacques Tati, and I recommend it. I think it's from the 60s. But the director does this really interesting thing with sound. It's, you know, even like picking a pen up, or pulling a chair out, or closing a door, opening a door. The director really emphasizes those sounds, and it becomes this symphony, and these patterns emerge. And I remember walking out of the theater, and I was in New York City at the time, getting into the subway, and everything was alive. My senses had completely been changed. I saw the world, heard the world in a very different way. And so that's where my interest began. But yeah, I definitely want to submit my work to film festivals and gallery spaces. But I like the idea of, making it, because there's a lot that's missing from these speakers. When you have headphones on, you really get to hear the textures and the voices. So I like that idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. So one more round for them. Thank you so much for being here. All right, and I would like to welcome back to the stage Dr. Francisca James Hernandez. You ready to present the Sawada Award? Yes, we're ready. Thank you, everyone.
So we have a special guest, everybody, a surprise special guest. He thought he was getting rid of us, but not so easy, David. Not so easy to get rid of us. I don't know if all of you know Dr. David Doré, but he's the cutie up there on the screen. And we asked him to be here. He doesn't really know why he's here, except that he's always here with us at the summit, always. He is the first person that listened to the crazy ideas of myself and my dear colleague Rosalia Solórzano to start an ethnic, gender, and transborder studies department.
and started us off with a lead faculty position, it was called, in 2015. I don't know if you remember that, David.
Yeah, I remember.
But Rosalia and I made a beeline for him right in this very room when he was first named campus president and talked to him about our ideas. And he was like, yeah, let's do that. And he was the first person to actually tell us yes. And he has told us yes ever since. And he has been foundational to the creation, the perpetuation, and the growth of the ethnic, gender, transborder studies, and sociology department. So we wanted to invite him back. Thank you for taking the time, David, because David has gone on to be a chancellor. He is now chancellor of the Virginia Community College system. He left us a month ago, and we're still grieving. We're still in luto. That's why I'm in black. Right? And we will always miss you, David, but we are going to spring on you something that you would not accept before, because you had to go all the way to Virginia to accept an award that we tried to give you several years ago. And he said, no, 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 no. This is my job. You don't give me an award. And that is true. It was his job to support us. But the way he supported us, that he was always there as a mentor, as an advisor, as someone that listened to us, that guided us, that advised us, that helped us in so many ways. That is above and beyond and unusual. So today, and every year, we have given what we call the Saguara Award. Not the Saguaro Award, the Saguara Award. And that was coined by my dear colleague, Rosalia Solórzano, who's a staunch Xicana feminist. And it has just stuck. So, David, we are awarding you the Saguara Award for leadership and support of ethnic and gender studies from the EGTSS department at PCC, of which you are one of the founding fathers. Thank you so much. We miss you, and you better come back to us one day.
Well, Rosalia, I'm just touched, and I certainly miss Pima, as you know already. By the way, I'm in a traffic jam on I-95 coming back from Northern Virginia Community College. I've visited my 16th college so far since I've been here. So please know that I will always love Tucson, and I certainly will always love EGTS and the work that you're doing, because I think it's really transformational. And so I'm really honored, and I just want to thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Let's give him a hand and some applause.
Thank you, everyone.
And David, they warned me that I cannot send this in the mail because it will break. So that means the next time you're in Tucson, you have to give me a call and we'll get together.
I will come back to get it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for linking in with us.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, y'all, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in 10 minutes. 2:35.
I just want to ask you all to please join me in thanking her, because her support, I mean, it's her office that is funding this event and that funds our fall public event. And she has been there also from the very beginning. She already got her Saguaro Award a number of years ago. In fact, you got a big one. And so I have a number of other people. So Dolores, thank you so much. We are so appreciative of the staunch support you have always provided to us in your heart, in your budget, and in your presence. You've always been here with us, and you've always made our events so special. Thank you so much. Let's give her a hand. Thank you. Gracias. Gracias.
All right, folks, thank you for being here and your attention. Let's jump into our final panel so we can move on to our exciting open mic event and then get you home. Welcome back, everybody. And again, thank you not only for your attendance, for sticking it out and hanging out with us this afternoon. It means a lot to not only our panelists, but to Elizabeth, who is also organizing this event, and everybody involved. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your appreciation. My name is Marcos Guerrero Trujillo. My pronouns are they, them, ella, and I teach sociology and gender and women's studies here at Pima Community College. Just a quick moment around our gender and women's studies sort of perspective that is really central and important to our department and the work that we do. We've been really lucky to have a very diverse and engaging set of panelists today, but it's not an accident that the majority of our presenters are women, feminine people, who bring their expertise in not only their communities, but in their families, in their lives, and their spirituality, and really being able to put that value back into the work that we do, because what we know from a feminist gender and women's studies perspective is that the work of women, feminine people, LGBTQ people, has long been underappreciated, erased, subversed, and so we take it really seriously and with a lot of love and care that is what we are committed to, and so we really appreciate you being so receptive to that. And I think that the importance of gender diversity in those experiences have been a part of all of these presentations that we've heard so far today. When we think about things like missing and murdered Indigenous women, the role of families in connecting us to our culture and our language, the resources that support us in moving through our lives, so much of these things we can look to as the work of marginalized people. So just wanting to kind of connect that, and if you have any interest, if you have cousins, friends, kids who might be interested in that kind of learning, community opportunities, we really appreciate incorporating that into our courses of all kinds, but especially in the gender and women's studies areas. So we are very pleased and excited to offer you this third and final panel for today that we have titled Sustainability, Environment, and Culture. We have a total of 3 different presentations. Unfortunately, Carlos Valencia was not able to make it today. And so if you want really cool, detailed bios, check out your handouts. But first off, we're going to have Dr. Hunter Claypatch and Alicia Villalpando discussing and presenting Nuestro Barrio, Nuestra Comunidad, Community Engaged Archaeology in Sonora, Mexico. So with a lot of heart, welcome them to the stage, please. Okay. Thank you.
All right, hello, my name is Hunter Claypatch. I hold a PhD in archaeology from Binghamton University. I'm currently an adjunct faculty member at Pima Community College. I'm also a research associate at Binghamton University and a ceramicist for desert archaeology here in Tucson.
Buenas tardes. My name is Felicia Villalpando, and I'm an archaeologist from the National Institute of Anthropology and History in Sonora. And I've been working there in the Sonoran Desert for many, many years. And I'm very pleased to be here with you and honored to be in this panel with you.
So in kind of going through the presentation outline, I'm going to start by introducing community-engaged archaeology and really how it formed as a response to earlier colonial models of archaeology. I'm then going to talk about binational collaboration within the Mexican state of Sonora and also the pre-colonial trincheras tradition. And finally, I'm going to talk about the modern community of trincheras and really their deep connection with the archaeological past.
My session will be to talk about the opening of our archaeological site for public visit and how we involve junior high students in all the process of open the site of public visit. I also will talk about the community experience at the visitor center, about the participation of these young students as Amigos del Cerro, sort of organization that they decide to create to collaborate with INA, and also the experience of Nuestro Barrio, Nuestra Comunidad, how these young people become ceramists, how they learn the way to do ceramics, and it was something that gave them a pride to be members of their own community, because they share their knowledge to some other people outside town.
So in talking about community-engaged archaeology, I think it's really important to talk about the discipline's problematic origins. Modern archaeology emerged in the late 18th century during the period of European colonialism. During this time, European powers actively looted archaeological sites as proof of victory and to really reinforce their physical domination over colonized powers. To this day, the world's top colonial powers, like Great Britain and the United States, still hold the majority of the world's archaeological collections and still produce the bulk of professional archaeologists. Through this origin, professional archaeologists are treated as the authoritative gatekeepers over the past and really how the past is interpreted. Despite local communities often being directly impacted by archaeological research, archaeologists and academics until recently have provided little input for them to actually discuss their perspectives. This colonialist legacy is particularly relevant within North America, where archaeologists have traditionally interpreted the archaeological past for indigenous communities and often exploit sacred knowledge in the process. So amidst the backdrop of colonial archaeology, there's been growing attempts to involve multiple perspectives into archaeological research. Much of this began during the social and intellectual movements of the 1970s and 1980s, including third-wave feminism, the Red Power movement, and Marxist-based participatory action research throughout Latin America. For archaeologists, this also became a period of self-reflexivity in an attempt to grapple with whose positions really matter, and also recognize our own privileged position as academics in the dissemination of information. Archaeological research that involves diverse perspectives goes by many different names, which can be seen on this slide. While there's slightly different meanings with these types of archaeology, these types of engaged archaeologies are all unified by the desire to develop collaborative and co-producing partnerships between academics and the wider local community. Principal to all forms of collaborative archaeology are the production of educational resources and a community-based preservation of archaeological sites. So within Sonora, Mexico, archaeological activism and community engagement is particularly dynamic. Much of this is owed to the long-term binational partnership between my former advisor, Randall McGuire, and Elisa Villalpando. Since the 1980s, this partnership has resulted in numerous academic projects, countless publications, and the production of a new generation of academics, including myself, who aim to continue this work. This collaboration has been founded on the Marxist-based liberatory praxis, using archaeology to educate, transform, and uplift communities impacted by archaeological research. This collaboration also works to disseminate information across the U.S.-Mexico border. Academics obviously recognize that borders would have been irrelevant in prehistory, but the U.S.-Mexico border still creates a very real boundary that few archaeologists have historically been willing to traverse. So the long-term partnership between McGuire and Villalpando is focused on what is called the Trincheras tradition. Material evidence of this tradition dates from between 400 to 1450 CE and can be found across much of northern Sonora and northward until the international border. This tradition has long been typified by production of shell jewelry from the coast, production of a distinct specular purple-painted pottery, and by occupation on terraced volcanic hills. Unlike many pre-colonial traditions in the southwest United States that you might have heard about a bit more, the Trincheras tradition is still very poorly understood, which leaves open a lot of important research for ongoing archaeologists. So the contemporary town of Trincheras, Sonora is also the heartland for the pre-colonial Trincheras tradition. This town is located about 180 kilometers southwest of Nogales and is home to about 1,700 inhabitants, known primarily for cattle raising and production of a famous regionally local cheese. Many of the inhabitants have been in this town for generations and carry a deep knowledge of the landscape and its surrounding environment. Importantly for us, interwoven within the local community is the omnipresence of the archaeological past, which spans back several thousand years. This presence includes archaeological sites which are visible all over the landscape and the material evidence which can be found throughout the local community. The archaeological site of Cerro de Trincheras is the most visually prominent marker on the landscape and forms a strong part of the town's collective identity. This site was intensively occupied between 1300 to 1450 and was excavated in the 1990s by Maguire and Villalpando, a team of binational archaeologists and local community members. This slideshow shows some of the artifacts that were recovered from the site, as well as some of the architectural remains which are still standing. So for nearly 30 years, there's been ongoing archaeological projects within the Trincheras municipality. This started with the excavations at Cerro de Trincheras, but has continued with ongoing work at the nearby site of La Playa, a massive sprawling site with evidence of human occupation dating back several thousand years. These projects are organized by the Instituto Nacional de Antropología y Historia, but include the frequent employment of local Trinchereños to assist in excavations and artifact processing. The employment of local Trinchereños creates a dynamic situation whereby locals often have a very complex understanding of archaeological methods and material culture. Furthermore, these local workers create an important bridge between academia and the wider local community. Upon returning home, they share information with family and friends about the past and are often able to connect with the local communities in ways that professional archaeologists or academic publications are seldom able to do.
I'm going to share with you some of the experience we have at the Trincheras communities. Especially since the building of, or the opening of the site for a public visit, because we just, not just have a path that connects all the things that archaeological were preserved to show to the public, but also we have a good shape facility where we could share not only the display of the things that we collect from the site, that we analyze from the site, but also to have some space where we could curate our collections and do things within the community. Here is how we decide to share the interpretive path with the visitors, because since the excavations of mid-90s, we decide to consolidate not to reconstruct, but consolidate some of the things that we excavate, and then we decide that the path could go through the lower part of the terraces to the highest point, where we could share the pre-Hispanic society, how they used to live, and also to share with the visitors the complexity of the regional center of the Trincheras tradition. We also have a permanent exhibit that we call Recorrido Introductorio, where we share the cultural history of the Trincheras tradition in one side of the path of the area of the exhibit, and the other side is the way we could preserve archaeological heritage in Mexico, not just from the point of view of the researchers, but also how the community could be engaged in this, because it's their cultural heritage, the things that we're studying and preserving. So Recorrido Introductorio has both sides sharing the cultural history of the Trincheras tradition since the very early, the first groups of hunters that hunt the megafauna, through the ceramic development of the sites of the hamlets around Cerro de Trincheras, through the complexity of a regional center that dominates the middle Magdalena Valley. But we decide, since the first time we excavate, the first time we were doing archaeology in town, that we have to share our knowledge with the community, because otherwise it doesn't have any sense if we just keep it for academia or for very high academic purposes. We decide that we need to share everything we did with the community. And since the first time we have the recorrido introductorio, the opening of the site. We had as their guest of honor the young students from Telesecundaria in Trincheras, the first grade of Telesecundaria. They were really the guest of honors of the opening of the site. So it made a bond with the community. That's what the way they realized how important the site was, not just for the archaeologists, but for the people. And since the first management plan we have in 2 years before the opening of the site, we invite again Amigos del Cerro. That was the name that they decided to have. They were then third grade students. It's been 3 years since the opening of the site, and they were participating with scientists from different disciplines. They were the same level of opinion of the things that we needed to do to preserve the site, to continue working in the site, and they were part of our team. It was something that was not even in Mexico very, very familiar. So people from Mexico City, from community engagement, from INA, they came also to have a workshop with them because they wanted to know how the community could be really involved in the preservation of the site. And it was very interesting that since this workshop, the results of the workshop were that the main things that the community wanted to preserve were cheese, of course, then ocotillo, which is a plant that grows in the trincheras, the Cerro de Trincheras hill, and also, and the third place was the site. So it was interesting that just in 3-4 years, they really thought that the site was something important and was part of their heritage. But the best experience we have with the community was what we call nuestro barro, because the Rogelio Leon is a guy from the community that has been working with INA since the first time that archaeology was done in the area. And he decided to experience with ceramics. He was autosuficient. Yeah. 3 minutes. Okay, I have to go very, very quickly. So this is the experience that we have with them. The young people learn how to do ceramics, and they not just learn to do it and exhibit in the school, they continue exhibit this in the local fairs around Trincheras. And it was something that was replicated years before with the next generation of high school students. Also, there were people from other communities interested in know how to do the ceramic, and they came to Trincheras, to our visitor center, to learn how to do it. Finally, we got an exhibit with the ceramic vessels, not just the prehistoric ceramic vessels, but also including the things that the young people were doing. So it was the possibility of sharing that the things that they were doing has the same value of the pre-Hispanic ceramic vessels. So I have to go very, very quickly. And the last thing that we did with the young people, with the new Amigos del Cerro, was in the 10th anniversary of the Cerro de Trincheras opening for the public. And we have another workshop where they were learning how to do TIC, to use not the cell phone, not just for calls, but also to to get involved in some other things and messages that came from their own community, sharing their identity to the archaeologists of the 3021. I mean, in the future, they were selecting whether things were important for them and what they were giving those messages to the archaeologists of the future. So what I want just to share with you is that the community is something that has to be do every time, but it means that we have to think that this is important and not just doing archaeological research.
Thank you very much. What an amazing example of this not only collaborative project, but how when we involve youth, community making, reaching out, building connections, that's not a foreign concept for young people. When given that opportunity, they can show us so much. So thank you for that wonderful example. Next, we have Robert Villa, who is a Pima Community College student, in addition to being a botanist and a herpetologist. So we are going to have a presentation called Sapo Verde to You, Biocultural History and Conservation of the Sonoran Desert Toad. So thank you so much, Robert.
Can you all hear me all right? Right. Well, thank you so much. Skug Dash, Anyanyopchagig Robert Villa. My name is Robert Villa. Lyosan Chania. It's great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Apart from being the president of THS, I'm also community outreach assistant at Tumamak Hill, Chamamag Duag, which is sort of a sister hill to the Trincheras hill, because they're the same cultures. Chamamag Duag means horned lizard hill, and the Catalinas are otherwise known in O'atam as Babad Duag. And I always wondered why, and this is the west side of Push Ridge. Can you see the toad?
Mm-hmm.
There's a big sitting toad. So I'm going to talk about psychedelics and the intersection of some dubious narratives that have been interjected around this animal. This is the Sonoran Desert toad, Incilius alvarius. It has many names. In Yoeme, it's Guarepa. In O'atam, it's Babat. And it's iconic. It defines the Sonoran Desert region. It's just as Sonoran as a saguaro or a Gila monster, a desert tortoise. It's why it's called the Sonoran Desert toad. And you can see that its range pretty much overlaps with the Sonoran Desert. Now, apart from hanging out around lights where they're eating insects or around swimming pools, they seem to like to go into kangaroo rat burrows. They like to hang out in there. And they come out in the monsoon season. I don't need to tell you guys about the amphibians that come out in the rainy season. But they come out, in some areas, they come out before the rain. And I'll get to a reason why later. They lay thousands of eggs, and they're large. They're the largest amphibian in our area, and they produce, over 3,000 eggs. And those large individuals that do that, they sustain the population. And so because they're so large, they'll eat anything that walks by. Spiders, tarantulas, small birds, small centipedes. If it fits in their mouth, they'll try and swallow it. Of course, things eat them. This is an indigo snake that we photographed outside of Hermosillo. There's a badger walking off with one. Basically, toads have weaponized sweat. And this is why you don't lick toads. Toads produce the same thing that's found in oleanders. They're called digitoxins or cardiac glycosides that will relax your heart permanently. And there's also something called bufotenin, which is a mild hallucinogen, but it's wrapped up with all those dangerous things. And so you can't just acquire this by licking a toad. You will get very, very sick. But for some reason, and it's the million-dollar question, is that the Sonoran desert toad is the only animal on Earth that produces 5-MeO-DMT in those these big glands here on the dorsal surface. And like I said, we don't know why. And there's a prevailing myth that well, indigenous people must have known about this 5-MeO-DMT, and they must have smoked it for religious purposes. And the truth is that in 1981, there was an archaeologist in South Carolina who found over 10,000 headless toad skeletons. And knowing that toads had bufotenin, all toads have bufotenin, and it's a psychotropic, this archaeologist said, well, this is evidence of psychedelic practice. Well, it turns out people ate toads after carefully preparing them. And so this guy in Texas read this statement, which is kind of a mistake, and it got his mind going, and he arrived at this book on toads. And in that book, there's a chapter on the chemistry of the skin of toads. And there's one very vague, obscure citation or reference to this paper from 1967, which was done by an Italian-Argentinian chemist who surveyed toad skin toxin composition, and he said in one article that this toad, our Sonoran desert toad, has 5-MeO-DMT. So what did Ken Nelson do? He drove to Arizona from Denton, Texas. He found a toad, squeezed the gland out, and smoked what came out of it. And he had a life-changing experience, and he wrote this pamphlet, and he published it in 1984. And it was this very detailed account. He even tried to start a church of the Toad of Light. And as this practice moved to Mexico, there was a vanguard of doctors who were very interested in psychedelic experiences and what it could do to help people. And it could help people. It can wipe your addiction to hard substances, PTSD. It holds a lot of promise. But they were doing this, they were giving this to indigenous people, impoverished people, and within that milieu, the idea that this was some forgotten medicine started to circulate. And it's very easy to make that connection because toads appear all over the Americas in pre-Columbian art and everything. And they're important. They're messengers of the underworld. They're signs of fertility, et cetera, et cetera. The only amphibian with a chemical, ethnopharmacological thing is this tree frog from the Amazon called kambo, and it's not even a psychedelic. It gets you really sick, but then your senses are sharpened, and it's to help hunters who are fatiguing or losing their talent. They burn this substance into their skin, and it makes them more agile. But in cultures here, like the Seri people, these toads were seen as toxic creatures. And I was told by someone in Desemboque that one of the elders told him, if you're a bad person in this world, you'll be reincarnated and you'll be humped by a giant toad in the afterlife. So be good to them. So this sort of cultural appropriation is happening through the popularization and the commodification, commercialization of psychedelics, and especially in the Seri community. They tried to do this in the Yaqui community, and the person who tried to do that was excommunicated. And so he literally coerced or projected this narrative onto the Konkak, or the Seri people. And it's really split the community because some of them see it as a very viable economic opportunity, and it's propelled them through the COVID pandemic financially. But not everyone sees those benefits. And in Desemboque, people are kind of resent this message and this image, and they told me multiple times, you know, our doctors from 20 years ago never trained us around using this animal in this way, at least. So like I said, it's gaining popularity because, well, it's a very extreme experience, but also it holds a lot of therapeutic potential. But the demand is growing in such a way that these animals are being exploited. It's just no simple way of putting it. And there's tons of not just ecological damages that will occur, but all the solutions that people propose for what the problem that you're seeing on this slide are just not tenable. We're essentially working in triage mode at this moment. This animal here has been severely abused, and its skin is no longer warty. It's got this rash. So there's a disease factor that is going on here that can be transmitted to other animals. But there's an annual symposium. Mike Tyson claimed to have done it 3 times a day, which is ridiculous. And there's just no such thing as fair trade toad because, you know, to say fair trade, you're implying a really serious industrial problem that we really don't even know if that's even happening. There's just no data to say anything one way or the other. So it's gotten a lot of media attention. And so I guess I'm just here to tell you about this phenomenon, and I think you'll be seeing it more often as psychedelics gain notoriety and popularity and living here in the Sonoran Desert. So there's artificial syntheses that have been published to try and dissuade people from getting it from the toad. And I don't need to tell you guys about all the other threats that this toad and the whole Sonoran Desert faces. So we have this campaign of merchandise and posters that raises money. It promotes respect for all living things, especially the toad. We have a Sonoran Desert Toad Fund to promote more outreach than anything, because actually understanding their populations is a huge, huge, huge task. And it's going to require an army of scientists to actually understand what's happening with this toad. So in the meantime, I've now deputized you as toad guardians. How much time do I have left? 4 minutes. Okay, that was fast. So now that I have 4 minutes, I'm going to tell you about Guarepa and the story of the first monsoon season and the significance of this species to the Yoeme people. So in the first world, the wilderness world of the Yoeme, the water was disappearing, and all the animals and the beings had gathered, and Father Yuku, the rain god, hadn't rained, hadn't dropped any water out of the sky, and a little sparrow goes, "I've got an idea. I'm going to fly up to Yuku's house, and I'm going to knock on his door." And he answers the door, and he goes, "What do you want?" And the little bird goes, "Well, we're dying of thirst down on the earth. Would you mind just bringing us some rain, some water?" And he goes, "Well, you know, you guys haven't been praying to me. I feel like you guys are kind of ignoring me. Why don't you fly back down to the earth and you tell them to start a ceremony or a party, or, you know, just tell them to start praying for me." And okay, yeah, that's fair enough. And so everyone on earth sees the sky get black, and the wind starts blowing, and the lightning, and then it never rains. And that's because on the way down, the little bird got struck by lightning or got blown into a mountain or something. And so one by one, all the different birds who could fly up to Yuku the same thing would happen, and it wouldn't rain. It's sort of like monsoon season. There's a buildup, and then nothing. A buildup, and then nothing. And so Guarepa was watching this, and he goes, "Hold my beer, watch this. I've got an idea." he sends his children out into the Sierra Bacatete, and he sends them out with corn. And he says, when you hear thunder and lightning, I want you to start singing. All right, Dad, we'll do that. And Guarepa and his wife, they ask Bat, Xochitl, can we borrow your wings? Sure, you can borrow my wings. So he takes his wings off, gives them to Guarepa, and Guarepa and his wife hop up the mountain, embraced amorously, leaving some strings of eggs where there's some puddles in the ground. And they get to the top of the mountain, and they say goodbye, and Guarepa puts the wings on. He flies up to Yuku. What do you want? Well, we'd like you to rain. And he goes, okay, well, fly back down and tell him to start praying for me. And Guarepa goes, sure, okay. But what he does is he hides under Yuku's door, and he starts singing. And when that happens, his call is being thrown out beyond the door, out into the mountains. And so Yuku comes storming out, chasing his voice, not the toad. And so he gets to a certain point, and one of Guarepa's kids hears this and starts singing, and confuses Yuku, and he goes towards one of his kids. And it keeps going and going until he finally reaches the earth, and it rains. And the path that he took became the Rio Yaqui. And where his children had been hiding and the corn had sprouted up became the ancestral villages of the Yaqui people. So to this day, if you harm a toad, you mistreat it, you disrespect it, you're cursing yourself and you're cursing everybody else with an unhealthy rain cycle. So that is the significance of our toad, and I hope that that you take this message into the community and respect toads and the rest of our ecosystem. So thank you so much for having me.
So we just got word that there was a pair of lost keys that were found out here in the atrium. So if everyone wants to double check and make sure you have what you came with, if you're missing something, we might have found it. So thank you very much, Robert. That was an incredible presentation and a very interesting connection to the first presentation about how important our understanding and connection to real knowledge is and the risks that we run of cultural appropriation and environmental degradation when we don't have that guidance and connection to community and history. So thank you very much. Last but not least, my colleague of sociology, Dr. Tiffany Amorete Young, is going to be sharing some of her work that she does not only with our students, but as part of her PhD research, and it is titled You, Food and Society, Activating the Sociological Imagination from Foodways to the Global Food System. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I'm back. All right. I'm going to share something with you that I'm super passionate about, and that is food. We had some wonderful food today, right? And it enriched us, it nourished us, it made us feel more like a community. It was cultural, right? There's so much that is written and inscribed in food, and that's because everybody eats. So You, Food and Society, Activating the Sociological Imagination. First, I'm going to share with you what the sociological imagination is, and then I will talk about, well, what does food have to do with the social world, right? How can we connect food to different layers of the human experience, from the local all the way to the global, right? From the individual to larger systems and structures. And then I'll introduce you to the course projects that my students do in my Soc 120 in-person class. This is how I build community in the classroom while addressing things that just really matter to us. And then, of course, I will share with you a video that me and my students made, and it was really, really fun. And then special thanks to several organizations and just different people that helped support this project and its development. So we'll go all the way back to C. Wright Mills, and he's the one who is noted for coining the term, the sociological imagination, and it is the ability to see and recognize societal patterns that influence the individual as well as groups of individuals, and it situates these larger processes within a historical context, right? Without history, without understanding how we got here, we lose context, we lose sight of things, right? And so we always want to honor those stories and those perspectives. So we call those things personal troubles. We all have personal troubles, right? I'm sure right now you can think of several personal troubles. And likely, you're not alone, because those personal troubles are informed by larger structures, larger social forces, right? I like to bring up the example of my student loan debt, but I won't bring that up right now, okay? And we talk about how these things are embedded in the institutional arrangements of our society. So from foodways to the global food system, I'm going to be very brief, right? So the second part is this very much a community engaged project. I had to, when I came here to Arizona, I had to relearn our system, I had to relearn our cultures, I had to honor our unique history because I had come from Texas, right? And so things were a little different, even gardening and learning, you know, what pests I need to be mindful of and what birds are gonna eat what seeds. I had to learn all that coming back here, and it's been a wonderful experience. So we can look at the individual, and at the individual level, we might acknowledge something like our own food consumption. We may acknowledge something like nutrition, right? Are we thinking about nutrition when we are making decisions about food, or are we thinking about time constraints? Are we trying to get to work, right? What's going on in our lives? Are we thinking about a budget, right? Are we constrained by SNAP benefits or welfare, right, as we know it? Like, what are the things that are informing our food choices? And then, of course, we have the lived experiences of eating disorders, and this is something that I like to bring to attention within my classes because it is so prominent, not just amongst women, right, but all of us are going to experience some form of disordered eating. And I like to let my students know, are we disordered, or is the food system disordered, right? Are we making bad choices, or are the choices that we have actually constrained and we're not really given the tools to maneuver, right, all of these things regarding food and the political economy that surrounds it. And then we go to the neighborhood, all right, and we know that we have a history of residential segregation. And these are not natural, right? These have not always been in existence. These have been forged through economic and political policies. So I encourage my students to look at our neighborhoods, right? We choose 2 zip codes, perhaps a zip code that's more affluent and perhaps a zip code that's less affluent. And what we look at is, what is the density of fast food restaurants? What do all grocery stores look alike? Do they all offer the same kind of produce and benefits? And after doing just a little bit of field work, we come to realize that no, they don't, right? Not everybody has access to low caloric, high nutritional density types of foods, right? And this is, do you have access to the farmer's market? Does your family have a car? Or are we trudging around in this 115-degree weather, right, in buses trying to carry back milk, right, or things that can spoil? Are we making decisions based on shelf life, right? These are the types of things that I encourage my students to think about. And then after looking at the density of fast food restaurants, liquor stores, predatory, loan companies and things of that nature, we then look at the mapping of health disparities. Okay, and we recognize that there is a correlation or a relationship, right? One of the #1 killers in our nation is chronic heart diseases, right? And we are very familiar, we're talking about communities that are dealing with diabetes. I'm dealing with high cholesterol, right? I'm trying to bring my own cholesterol down. The reason I came here was because my uncle passed away while he was getting dialysis, right? And so diabetes in my community and thinking about our relationship to food is very emotional, and it matters to me significantly. And I learned that it matters to my students as well, right? So whenever a nation adopts our food system model, guess what? Their health profiles begin to mimic our own, right? There were some schools in Mexico that didn't have running water, but had access to Coca-Cola, right? So we also want to be thinking about these very conscious decisions, like how do we acknowledge and combat these chronic heart diseases? And then we go to the national level, and water. Water is so important, right? And so what I'll tell my students is I say, what is the state of water in our area? What is the state of water in the Southwest? What is the state of water in the nation? And what is the state of water in the globe? And then my students, as a learning community, get together, they divvy up the work, they divvy up the research, and together they form a presentation, and I say, teach me about water. And we teach each other, and we learn a lot. Okay, we learn that there are no legal protections to safe water, right? We don't have that. And so these are some things that we can begin to think about, right? Water conservation. You know, sometimes I'll have a bottled water, and I feel bad because I'm producing plastic, but at the same time, I know that the water coming out of my faucet can be harmful to me and my pets, right? Thinking about what is in our water. And then, of course, unfortunately, there is a great deal of oppression, right, that continues to exist. And that oppression has always been related to the land, right? And it continues to this day. So we actually look at the conditions of migrant farm workers, right, historically and today. I introduce them to the discrimination experienced by Black farmers through the Pigford cases, where the USDA engaged in rampant discrimination and decimated Black farmers in the United States. So if you're unfamiliar with those cases and that case law, I highly recommend that you become familiar with it so that we can understand, right, what are the barriers to restoration and what are the barriers to self-determination, right, so that we can become practitioners of the land and reverse that exploitative relationship historically that has existed, particularly for minoritized groups and communities. And then I also look at food in prisons and detention facilities, right? And this is probably the uglier side of food. What does that look like? And I'm not going to share with you my whole dissertation. But I will say that we create captive consumers in our detention facilities, meaning we offer them poor food, sometimes very little, nothing to sustain you. We all have different metabolic rates, okay? We all need different types of food, and we need different amounts of food. And we can create conditions of malnutrition and starvation within total institutions. This would force then detainees to purchase from commissary, right? And then, of course, there are companies and corporations like Aramark that make significant amount of money from this political economy that has been situated in our prisons and in our detention facilities, right? And so thinking about food in all of these different contexts is a way that we open up our sociological imaginations. And then we take it to the global. And when we get to the global, we follow commodity food chains. I tell my students, what's your favorite food? And they get to choose whatever it is, and we follow it. Where has it been in this world, right? Because our nation is interconnected, but we are largely consumers. We are not always producers. So where has our food been all around the globe, and how does this contribute to inequity, right? And also thinking about world trade agreements and how those are going to impact countries that are agricultural based, that are indebted to what we would call core nations or industrialized nations or post-industrial nations. And so we see how global stratification can be tied, again, to food. And that's because everybody eats. Also, I love to also talk about the power of multinational corporations like McDonald's and Pepsi and Coca-Cola that actually have a significant hand in shaping policy and shaping trade agreements. And we need to recognize the role that these corporations play, but also the role of our own consumption. So we bring it back, right? We go from the individual, the neighborhood, the national, the global, and all of a sudden, we are all connected by food. And I hope that my students become empowered by this experience. I do have some testimonials. So one of our learning outcomes for Social 120 is to assess social problems at the national and international levels and discuss the social problems affecting culturally diverse groups within a global context. And I hope that I have done that through the exploration of food at all of these different levels. So we did explore water in the Southwest. And another thing that I did for my students was introduce to them to field notes and qualitative data collection and inquiry. All the qualitative researchers don't get enough credit. So what my students do is they try to activate their 5 senses. And for a few days, we all decide which days we're going to do this. They document their food intake and their water intake and their drinking intake, right? What does it smell like? What's the texture like? Are you sitting with anyone? Are you sitting alone? Are you having a meal with your family? Capturing as many of the dynamics that we can. Then we anonymize the data, so remove any personal identifiers, create a data set, and we all get together with a potluck and we code the data together. And my students learn a lot about the process of coding. They say, oh, I wish I was more descriptive. I wish I had captured more details. And I said, that's a takeaway, right? That's a learning moment. And then they see how they did different documentations and what are the connections. And then I have a few ambitious students who will be like, 1 code, 2 codes, I want 5 codes. And then they come back and they say, no, never mind, 1 code was fine. Right, recognizing what goes into qualitative inquiry. And my goal is that future students will also contribute to this data set, that the work that the initial students did will be something that is built upon, and we will have, a really good documentation of food consumption amongst Pima community college students. And then lastly, we have our seed bomb activity. And I get seeds from Native Seed Search. They were very, very gracious in offering me a community seed grant. And we get together and we make seed bombs, right? We get soil, water, clay, native seeds. We talk about seed stewardship and the importance of seed biodiversity, because believe it or not, the seeds that get planted into the ground is a political and an economic issue, and it is something that we need to recognize. What it means to keep away invasive species, and what it means to give the birds and the butterflies and the bees something to drink right on their journeys, somewhere to stay. And so we do this together, and this was how we built community. Hello. I don't have time for the testimonials, but I just want to thank Native Seed Search, Liberatory Writing Across the Curriculum, and the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals for all helping me create and apply this kind of learning community. Thank you, everyone.
One more round of applause for this wonderful panel. We have about 5 minutes for question and answer. So does anybody have something that they would like to ask the panel or an individual? Great, we see one in the back. Thank you.
Voy a hacer mi pregunta en español al panel. En relación a cómo poder restar los estigmas debido a la ignorancia que se tiene con los psicodélicos. En mi experiencia, y siendo del estado de Oaxaca, yo no soy ajeno al uso del ululuqui, las semillas de la Virgen, los hongos, niños santos, ¿no? Pero me he encontrado en mi experiencia personal que tanto intraculturalmente como extraculturalmente tenemos cierta discriminación, porque yo lo noto eso como un llamado a los psicodélicos. Entonces, a veces dicen, no, pues eso nada más es para los brujos. O ya con el populacho letrado dicen, no, creo que ya vas para drogadicto. Entonces, yo quisiera saber cómo, si desde el punto de vista de la arqueología siempre ha sido así, o tú como investigador de los psicodélicos, ¿cómo podríamos hacerle para arrestar ese tipo de comentarios?
Gracias por la pregunta. Los psicodélicos, como tú notas, son muy estigmatizadas y yo creo que el problema tiene que ser con el nivel de educación sobre eso, el uso de esas sustancias. Es una cuestión de educación, diría, y desarrollo de comunidad en los lugares donde esas cosas ocurren. Y cultivar respeto a las culturas que utilizan psicodélicos y presentar una narrativa honesta y no estigmatizarla. So, ¿respondí más o menos bien? Okay, good. I think the question is, y corrígeme si no es correcto. The question is, psychedelics, he's from Oaxaca, and he's familiar with psychedelic mushrooms where they're, that's where they're from, and all kinds of other psychedelics in Mexico. The people in Mexico are no strangers to psychedelics, but there's still, even within Mexico right now, a lot of stereotypes and stigmatization around it. Oh, that's only for witches and black magic, or or for hippies, or you're getting into drug addiction and things like that. So there's just a lot of. He's asking about, how do we stabilize this really polarized narratives that are coming out? And my response is cultivating a community that sort of predicated on mutual respect of cultural practices and understanding, and not, painting an honest picture about what psychedelics are and how they've been used and how they can be used respectfully, and because they do hold a lot of promise for serious mental problems, addiction, treatment-resistant depression, PTSD. But at the same time, if you don't know what you're doing, it can cause PTSD, not cure it. So that's my take on it. And archaeologically, that's another story. So far, toad remains in archaeological sites have not been linked to the Sonoran Desert toad. There's no indication that they've been trafficked through the trade routes, and there's no chemical evidence at either to support that. So that's my answer.
And I just would like to add that there are toe effigies in the archaeological record. There are toe images on the rock art, but it doesn't mean that it was something that was used as a psychedelic substance, because toes also means fertility, as Beto was saying. They also are related with the rebirth from Earth every year with the monsoon rains. So those were things that were really important for pre-Hispanic and prehistoric communities, because they needed to know when the rain season was coming, because they were agricultural people. So just thinking of toes as something related with psychedelic is something that is quite recent, and I will say that it's a bad practice with community engagement, the one that is actually trying to get into the Comcap people. That's not the way they used to use the toe licking in the past. There are no archaeological evidences of leaking of the past, as there are in the use of ayahuasca in the Colombian cultures and some other things that allow the displaying of some different experiences. But they are not in the Sonoran Desert.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. One last round of applause. The last and final part of our program before we do wrap-up announcements and thank yous is Brooke Anderson and Dr. Claypatch have been organizing an open mic event for our students. So we have a collection of students and community people who are interested and excited to share their work with you. So let's go ahead and transition to that now in essence of time, right? Okay. Okay.
Gracias. I'm always thinking about solutions of what the situation we're in. And maybe it was done on purpose, but this panel represents a possible solution. There's archaeology, and it's the study that teaches us what was and what is and what can be, as well as teaching us of our surroundings, wildlife, all our living, Mother Earth's living beings, food, and survival community. So I was just thinking, imagine if we started at least with small communities and teach what we have just been shared with, what solution it would be to be able to do better on Earth. Imagine?
Imagine another world is possible. ¿Verdad?
Yes.
Gracias. So how do you want to? No, there's no break. Nope.
We have 5 minutes, right?
Is there? Oh, well, we're kind of. Are we on? We're on time. You want to make a little break? Oh, they need some setup time, I think. So 5 minutes, but don't go anywhere. Or don't go far. Okay? Don't go anywhere. Don't go too far.
you want to. Are we good to go? Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the open mic portion of the summit. My name is Hunter Claypatch, and along with Brooke Anderson, we've worked towards making this portion of the summit possible. I think for us, the open mic portion is really important because so much about community making and community activism really starts at the student level. It's awesome how many students that we actually had sign up for this portion of the event, and how many of you are still here to showcase your support. I think it says a lot about how engaged Pima students are, and also you guys are with the greater local community. So for the next hour or so, we'll have students presenting their community making using a variety of mediums, from rhythm and poetry to videos. We also have students' artwork on display over there, so feel free to walk around and take a look at those works as well. With that said, I'd like to introduce our first open mic presentation by Josefina. Are you here?
Buenas tardes. When I was asked how much time I needed, I said 5 minutes. But after hearing and learning so much, I don't know if I need to keep that time, so I'm depending, no? I am Josefina Contreras Cárdenas, and I'm from a barrio where my father was raised, and now my children, my grandchildren. But it's a barrio that this year can acknowledge that families have been living in the same area and the same home for 102 years now. So first of all, I always want to ask for permission to the Tohonotam and the Yaqui people, because the lands we stand on, as we might be descendants, is still respect to ask for consent of our elders, no? Of our surroundings, of our land, of even to go pick medicine, fruit. You always ask for permission and you explain why you're needing it and wanting it. Our barrio is below Sentinel Peak along the Santa Cruz River and across from the original birthplace of Tucson. It's recognized just recently by archaeology studies that it's the original birthplace of Tucson. But it has gone through many hurt, no? That it was even turned into a landfill. And after the first people were there, they were displaced. And so if you go up in the mountain, you can see a lot of development going around in the city, within the city, no? And our barrio has been impacted by cultural gentrification. I see gentrification as a beautiful building, but the culture is the one that hurts, that separates, and that we need to be very careful of, and be careful of how we deal with it as well, because people can be nice in their ways, but culturally where we can be different. So it would take respect and unconditional love, regardless of how you're feeling, to be able to make a difference and change. If not, we're the same on the other side of the fence. So we don't want to be this. I'm not going to say I'm not a writer or a poet, but I've been learning because the University of Arizona has been working with our children. And hearing what I'm learning from our children is how this poem came into place. And like Doctora Stewart just said, imagine oppression, discrimination, racism exists todavía. And it could probably say even more, or just the same, no sabemos. So all of this is from realistic life experience, okay? And I might change a word because I first thought about our children, but then it came into sacred grounds, okay? They don't know we walk without shoes on Mother Earth, Madre Tierra. They don't know we run barefooted through our barrio streets, en la calle. They don't know some babies run free with or without a diaper. They don't know the river is our playground, sacred grounds. They don't know our elders returned late from the mountain that they had their own tiendita in the barrio during their childhood. That we have at home a capilla for our Virgen de Guadalupe, Tonantzin, and that it is not art. We don't celebrate our dead with costume parade, but in prayer with a candlelight and a soul's meal. They don't know the barrio ways of life. Chickens with their pollitos in the street, a horse with a rider, cats and dogs roaming in the roads, that the coyote, the bobcat, liebre, jabalina are also our relatives. Vecinos take care of each other's children, invite to have a meal together, that there wasn't any fence or wall separation, planted their gardens in each other's lands and shared the crops with one another. They don't know Tata's teaching that the gallo sings, gracias a Dios. And if the rooster crows during the night, it is because there will be a change of weather the following day. They don't know that the vecino can burn firewood not only for a weekend barbecue, but during the week for a carne asada, the aroma of a home-cooked dinner with a homemade tortillas. They don't know that neighbors share electricity because this month there wasn't enough money to pay for utilities. That relatives, friends, and family live all together in one house or their casitas. They just wouldn't know or understand or feel that our loud music is our traditional and cultural. And the drum is the heartbeat of our ceremony. They want us to be legitimate. Ometeo. Gracias.
Thank you for sharing that poem on cultural gentrification. Next, we have Annalisa Flores, who's going to be presenting on behalf of Kimberly Rodriguez, Miranda Paz, and Alisa Quitan on Title I funding in the Latinx populated high schools.
Hello, everybody. My name is Annalisa Flores, and for this photo voice assignment in Professor Yaxiola's class, we were asked to go into the community and take photos, videos of topics that were important to us and that we wanted to bring change to. So here's the video.
Schools that received Title I funding had underperforming scores and low graduation rates compared to those who did not receive this funding and those who had a lower rate of minorities enrolled. We looked at high schools within Tucson, but in different zip codes. In order to determine how funding affects different schools and the population, we looked at the minority enrollment rates, the graduation rate, school test scores, and if they qualified for Title I funding. Now, what exactly is Title I funding? It is a government funding which provides more money to schools with a high population of low-income students. Palo Verde and Flowing Wells both have Title I funding, while the University High does not qualify. The Title I funding gives the school about $500 to $600 per student a year. While some may argue that amount should be enough to cover extracurricular activities, that money is also to provide those students with free and reduced lunch for the school year. In relation to the test scores, there is a correlation between free and reduced lunch. The school does not provide the calories necessary for the students to fully function and achieve satisfactory academic progress due to the short budget.
Here are the varying results for the minority enrollment rate. The first school we looked at was Palo Verde. Palo Verde High School had a minority enrollment rate of 74.8%. Breaking it down to its highest ethnicity ratings, the school is 46.9% Hispanic/Latino, 25.2% white, and 15.6% black. Taking a look at Flowing Wells, it had an enrollment rate of 76.4%. It has a 70.5% rating of Hispanic/Latino and 23.6% white. The lowest rate of enrollment we found was University High School. They had an average enrollment of only 53.8% minorities. 46.2% of the students are white, 33.6% are Hispanic/Latino students, and 11.3% are Asian. How does this correlate with the graduation rate? A high quality, sufficient amount of education prepares students to tackle advanced academia. We found that Palo Verde had a 75% graduation rate, compared to Flowing Wells High School receiving a rate of 94% and University High School boasting a 98%. Compared to the Arizona average of 76%, we can see that Palo Verde is clearly struggling.
Test score results help determine the efficient education these students are receiving during their high school years.
When looking at Palo Verde, the school tested the lowest for math with an average score of 22%. As for its reading proficiency rate, it remained a stagnant 22% as well.
In comparison to Flowing Wells High School, we can observe a slight increase in rating. Math proficiency received a 22% and reading was 24%. Compared to University High School, the test results are significantly higher. Math proficiency rates are at 95% and the reading rates soar at 99%.
As an overview, Palo Verde High School sits at 11,807 in national rankings, Flowing Wells at 5,591, and University High School at 28.
Overall, Palo Verde had the lowest test scores and graduation rates of them all. Now, why does this matter? As we have seen, schools with the lower population of minority students had higher test averages and had more opportunities to succeed compared to those with the higher minority enrollment. We need to take action to make great quality education accessible to everyone. It is very important for our newer generations to receive excellent education so that they can prepare themselves and have a bright future ahead. Get involved in your community and vote. A good site to get explanations of the propositions is Ballotpedia. Keep a lookout for school-involved props.
Quick round of applause for Alyssa Quintan. She's right here. She was responsible for the creation of this video. Thank you.
All right, our next presenter is Margarita or Mita Cuaron on the 1968 East LA walkouts.
Hello? Yeah. Hello. My name is Margarita Mita Cuaron, and I am here to tell you my story. Behind me, you're going to see a film about the 1968 walkouts when I was 14 years old. At 14 years old, East LA was not the promise for a future. According to Sal Castro, he said to the parents one rainy night, "The schools are failing our kids. We have to do something." And so we proceeded and we presented our grievances to the Board of Education, and nothing became of it. On March 5th, or it's the 6th, 1968, Garfield, Roosevelt, Wilson, Belmont, and Lincoln walked out of school. I was 14 years old. I stood on top of a car with a street cone in my hand yelling, "Walk out, walk out, walk out." From the distance, I could see the brown berets. Felicia's father, Carlos Montes, was probably there. I didn't know him at the time. But in the next 2 weeks was an experience like none other for a 14-year-old. I was followed, I was chased, I was beat up by the security guards. I had the church come to my home, the Cardinal McIntyre, with the late Congressman Roy Ball and a judge named Sanchez, knocking on the door of my home, demanding that we stop this walkouts. And in my mind, I thought, how do you stop a dam from flowing? Because at that time, with the helicopters above us, cars following us, bugging our phones, chasing us with cameras, our community was under siege. We could not go anywhere. We had walked to parks. We had the students speaking. We ran to the churches to get refuge during the rain. And when the priest would open the door looking at us, "You get what you deserve." Into the next week, this whole experience kept on and on and on until finally we met with the school principal to arrange for a meeting in the auditorium. As soon as he came out in the foyer, looking at me, my father, another student, and my tia, said to my father, "Buster, you are a nobody, and you should be ashamed at preventing your daughter from getting an education. And if you do not leave my office, I'm going to arrest you." So my father put his hands out. We looked at each other. Do what you have to do. The four of us stood hand in hand like this, looking and waiting and hearing the clock tick, tick, tick. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, from every doorway, window, staircase, you name it, a hornet's nest of sheriffs came, threw us down to the floor, got our hands, twisted them. Our bodies were in positions that were unimaginable as they pulled us up in horror, looking at each other. And then they proceeded to drag us all the way down the hallway, down the stairwell, out the door. I was so infuriated. The only thing I had left that I could get my voice heard was to yell, "Look at what they're doing to us. Look at what they're doing to us." As they threw us into the car, we were in jail the whole day. I was expelled from school. By now it was into the second week of the walkouts. Upon my return with my father to the principal's office, I don't know, I don't remember what was said, but you can cut the tension with a knife. And as I proceeded to go to my first class, a history class, the teacher looks up at me and he says, "Oh, look who's decided to come back to school after all the trouble she caused you from preventing to get an education." He berated me, he shamed me, but I stood there in the doorway taking it. He says, "Whatever you do in my classroom, I'm going to fail you." And he did. But what he did not realize is that on the streets during this heightened historical event was I learned about my rights. I learned that I had a voice. I learned that I had a constitutional right to make my demands to get an education that was denied to me and thousands of Chicanos. And so, thank you for having me. Chicana power!
Thank you so much, Mita, for sharing that very powerful story from a very, very important time in our history. If we could have our next presenter here, it's a group, Stephanie Lopez, Angel, and Amanda, presenting the photo voice on homelessness.
Hi everybody, I'm Amanda and this is Stephanie. Angel couldn't make it today, but this is our photo voice project. We are in Elizabeth's Mass 219 class. This is the first time we've ever edited a video, so yeah. And also this is the first time we're meeting, so we're a virtual class, so we did this all virtually as a group, but together. So that was a fun experience as well. So I hope, I'm gonna keep it short because it's a 7-minute video, so I hope you all enjoy.
Also grown since overruled in the landlord's favor. Arizona's unemployment rate also grown since the pandemic, but even before COVID, Tucson poverty rate was worse in Black, Indigenous, and Latinx community.
To get into the issue of Hispanic homelessness, we first have to look at the problem as a whole in Arizona and what factors may have caused it to rise in recent years. In the last 3 years alone, there has been a spike of 23% increased homelessness compared to previous years. Arizona is likely an outlier because of its dire shortage of affordable housing, says Tom Simplet, the director of Arizona Department of Housing. While the state has experienced immense population growth in the past 2 years, its housing supply hasn't kept up. This is coupled with the fact many small businesses and statewide shutdowns since 2020 have kept doors closed on many previous jobs, according to AZ Central. With a chart taken from citydata.com, Hispanic poverty levels are actually up to 4 times higher than even Black and Native Americans in Tucson, with about 50,000 households being affected. This line is close to being below poverty, which means people that fall below $12,750 a year per person. With just one small issue or financial problem, many of the Hispanic residents wouldn't be able to even afford rent for the next month, which is one reason for the recent jump in homelessness in Tucson. One user commented on a Tucson Weekly article that gave some insight to why the homeless problem in Tucson was growing for Hispanics. They write, "I've worked in the social services. A huge part of this problem is how unbelievably hard it is to maneuver through the system, and none of the agencies communicate with each other, and some of them are literally right next door to each other. These people need a liaison specifically assigned to them to help them navigate their way out. The paperwork that different agencies hand out to them is insane. Nobody's going to sit through and read through everything when they're freezing and wondering when their next meal is going to be. For addicts, it is sometimes so difficult to get medication for withdrawal that it's not even worth it. They have to show up every day to get it. With no transportation or phone, some people will just give up." Not wanting to end on a bad note, there are still many ways that we can help. Local organizations like Gospel Rescue Mission and the Salvation Army have volunteering, donation, and food bank programs. There is also voting for more funding on programs in impoverished areas that can help residents navigate the bureaucracy of paperwork and red tape. This can be done by voting on propositions for more funding for translators and Spanish-speaking social workers to help Hispanics get the help that they need. Thank you.
As there are bad things in this issue, there are also good things. For example, Pima County's 10-year plan to end homelessness. This plan was developed by a subcommittee at the Tucson Planning Council for the Homeless. This plan consists on programs and services to help the homeless population. For example, emergency food and shelter program. This project helps provide shelter and assistance to individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Another program is Emergency Solution Grant. This assists people to quickly regain stability in permanent housing after experiencing a housing crisis or homelessness. Last but not least, Homeless Job Seeker, like Sullivan Jackson Employment Center that started in 1986 to help with the employment and training needs of homeless men and women seeking to enter the workforce.
Okay, next up we have Alisa Kitian presenting her artwork and also the discussing it, Disfruta.
Hello. Hi. Okay. Disfruta by Alyssa Kitian. Disfruta 2023 was an idea that came to mind when I was assigned a colored pencil project in my Drawing 2 class. The goal of the assignment was to demonstrate the ability to create layers through hatching, pressure, burnishing, and so forth. In all honesty, I procrastinated the progress of this piece and ended up rendering everything 2 days before it was due. We were only given 7 days to tackle this assignment anyway, but I could have managed my stress better. I was left behind with a broad range of ideas and only knew I wanted to play around with my characters and perspective. When I entered college, I started thinking about creating art that speaks of my upbringing as a Mexican Colombian woman. This would be the second piece I've made regarding that since freshman year. It's something vulnerable I only find myself talking to 2 friends about who also happen to be Mexican. Why does it have to be a sensitive subject to discuss your identity? To be asked about who you are and immediately jot down the times you were judged, abused, and bitter about being your blood. Disfruta challenges that negative perception that we internalize about our culture. I drafted the concepts with pen and pencil in my sketchbook, creating multiple thumbnails that played with the what ifs, do's, and don'ts. I compiled a collage of photos that displayed the Guadalajara restaurant's interior at different angles. The background referenced the layout of the restaurant and the mouth-watering food resembling their molcajete, otimo, tres bandidos, and a simple bean burrito. The paper I used was smooth Bristol, and the border is 1 inch wide. For composition, I used the Baroque diagonal method and the rule of thirds. This also helped me scale accurately from the final concept sketches perspective, background layout, and character placements. I then began to play with Prismacolor pencils, blocking in my darks, layering from faded muted tones to bright, intense colors, and smearing rubbing alcohol to blend the hues and values together. Most of the beloved characters seen were designed within the concept step of this piece. The 2 that stand out the most, the hair-frenzied man and the burrito celebrating child, have been created years prior, Dio and Chamaco. Dio takes on both the parental and maternal role as his nephew's parents remain absent from his youth. With little exposure to his cultural origins growing up, Dio resents the misfortune of Chamaco experiencing a similar isolation. As we see in Disfruta, Dio raises Chamaco in the community he was born in, actively discovering and connecting with the activities, celebrations, beliefs, myths, foods, and love. Disfruta, to me, and hopefully to the majority of people here, is the re-embrace of a culture you felt once or every now and then separated from. Growing up, I faced difficulty finding acceptance from kids who were my blood. As a girl who did not know how to speak Spanish, it became very discouraging when I was shunned for trying to communicate. I understand and speak more than I ever have, and I still receive nasty comments. Or sometimes my identity and culture was quizzed, challenged, and competed with. It didn't occur to me until later that I was treated this way by non-Latinos as well, who questioned why my brows were thick, thought her whiteness made her the better Alyssa, or thought I was another angry Latina lashing out for being ridiculed. I taught myself and believed the same prejudice or internalized hatreds others inflicted. It wasn't until these recent years I realized this has kept me in a tug of war between my Latin and non-Latin culture. I was bitter that the mistreatment was enough to convince me to stay insecure and frightened of the things I did not know about our customs, of being Mexican, of being Colombian. It was enough to convince me that helping my nana make tortillas, biting into the thick ginger sweetness of a cochito, walking under the Virgen de Guadalupe statues at the Food City aisles and feeling embraced and comforted by her presence, bobbing my head to Plan B, Pitbull, or Daddy Yankee in my dad's giant Chevy truck, letting the wafer and caramel of an oblea crumble and melt in my mouth did not make me Latina enough. When I tell you these lived experiences, I hope for a split second you were in my shoes and enjoyed the same memory you and I share. Enjoy our cultura, enjoy being Latina, disfruta.
Thank you for sharing your artwork and your story behind it. Next up, we have Alicia Sotomayor and on photo violence, the photo voice on drugs in Tucson and its effects on the Latino community.
210 class taught by Elizabeth. We had to create a photo voice project, and we wanted to share it with you guys today because this topic is important to us, and we decided that drugs were something that needed to be spoken about more. Because of how greatly it's affected our Latino community here in Tucson, the purpose of these interviews were to spread awareness and let people know that you can make it out of where you came from. Lots of these interviews are from Analia, and I hope you enjoy. This video is like a news reporting way, so.
Drugs greatly affect the Tucson Latino community, and here are some stories from the locals.
How have drugs affected Latino communities? Growing up, everyone I knew was in a gang, dealt or was addicted to drugs. Been in and out of prison, friends, neighbors, kids I went to school with, or even family members. I grew up on the south side of Tucson until I was about 10 or 11 years old. Then my family and I moved to the southwest side of Tucson. One thing I can truly say is thank you to my parents for keeping me in the same school even though we were out of district. I remember seeing addicts asking for money every time we went to the gas station and told not to make eye contact. There was another time where my nana had a neighbor who wasn't in their right mind, you could say. I was maybe 13 at the time and old enough to notice when someone was sick or an addict. He had scars all on his arms from the needles or injections he would make. We were never allowed to go outside by ourselves. Now here are some experiences members from the south side of Tucson have to say about drugs affecting the Latino communities.
How has drugs affected the Latino community? My family and I have experienced effects of drugs. My brother at an early age died of an overdose of heroin. My nephew at age 19 was shot and killed over drug dealings. 2 other nephews have overdosed on drugs and survived. Drugs have left my family and I a lifelong effect, especially on my mother. She locked herself in her room for weeks at a time. She wouldn't come out, only to eat every other day.
Stories like these are unfair, and the statistics show that deaths have nearly doubled in only 5 years, and they're directly targeting us, the younger generation.
In 2017, a statewide public health emergency was issued in Arizona to reduce opioid-related deaths. Confirmed opioid deaths in Arizona have since been rising. In 2017, opioid-related deaths totaled 923, compared to 1,894 deaths in 2022, which is almost doubled. In Pima County, drug-related deaths disproportionately affect Hispanic, Black, and American Indian communities. Younger populations are also at higher risk for overdose, since they have little physical tolerance to drugs and poor understanding of health risks.
These statistics are concerning, but there are ways we can fight this problem as a community. But before we get into that, let's hear some more stories from our community.
Drugs in Latino communities have always been a part of our family dynamics. I remember as a child, my family is Mexican American, and I have several generations that are born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, or the Southwest community. My grandmother is from the United States, and so is my grandfather, as far as their parents and their grandparents are also as well. The drugs have always been integrated into our family, unfortunately, in different ways. As a child, I have an uncle who has since passed away, unfortunately, of an overdose, was addicted to heroin. As a child, I remember visiting him in and out of prison. Then he would come home. Then he would be in some sort of trouble, and so on and so forth. He was a very loving person, very caring, and when he was on the drugs, he was a completely different person. It's almost like you didn't know who he was. And he ended up dying of an overdose a couple years after his last stint in prison. I think he started his prison in and outings from the age of 14, and he passed away at age 42. His son is also addicted to drugs. He's also become homeless, and he had another son who also passed away from being sick. He had some sort of kidney failure, but his was also a result of being addicted to drugs for so long, and it affected his organs, and he ended up passing away at age 44. I also have another uncle who was not addicted to drugs, but he integrated the drugs into his life by becoming a solicitor of the drugs. He sold the drugs. He maintained his family in that way. He had his first child when he was 14. He did not have a high school education. He had a second child when he was 16, so he had 2 kids under the age of 5 before he was even 21 years old, which is extremely rare. He also got married at 18. His wife ended up leaving him when he was 19 years old, and he had no choice but to result in selling drugs to raise his family with no high school education and no previous experience. He couldn't find any kind of job to help support him, so he found an easier way out, which was to sell the drugs and provide income for his family and raise his kids. He ended up in prison at the age of 23, and my grandmother had to raise both of his kids while he was in prison. Then he would come home, he'd be in the straight and narrow for a little while, then he'd go back to the same thing, knowing that he couldn't find a job or whatnot. So he had no choice to start selling his drugs again, and then he would end up in prison again. The third time he was in prison, his ex-wife came back into the picture and decided that she wanted the kids back, and my grandmother had custody of him, which he had no choice but to allow it because he was in the prison system. So she ended up getting them back. He's had a strained relationship with both of his kids since they were at an early age. To this day, his son is 44 years old, and he does speak with him, and he does, have a relationship with him. As far as his daughter, she's 42, and they still have a strained relationship. She has yet to speak with him since she was a child. His son also had issues with drugs as well, because at an early age, since his dad was in a prison, his mom wasn't around, he became part of a gang affiliated family, which he felt like that's what he needed at the time. So at 16, he was actually convicted of attempted murder because he was at a party where they had shot somebody, and that person was wounded with 3 bullets. So he ended up doing 15 years in prison at the age of 16, and he did not get out of prison until he was 31 years old. So he skipped his entire adulthood and early 30s, all of his 20s, all because he felt like there was no other alternative for himself as well. So it just shows you that the drugs in the Latino community tend to run generational, and it does affect people in different ways. And it doesn't just affect the person, but it affects their family, their spouses, their children, so on and so forth. So there's a lot that should be offered to help these people to get better situated.
So what are some things that we can do to help the community?
One way to fight the drug problem is through using Narcan, also known as naloxone. Narcan is a nasal spray medication that reverses the effects of opioid overdose within a few minutes. Having this medication on hand can help save lives and decrease the need for hospitalizations. In many states, first responders, firefighters, and police officers are supplied with the medication. In Tucson, only firefighters were supplied with Narcan, but in 2016, police officers were also supplied with Narcan, since a lot of the times police arrive before paramedics or firefighters. On March 29th of this year, the FDA approved the first over-the-counter naloxone nasal spray, making it available to the public for purchase without a prescription. Though it will take some time before the medication makes it to retail stores, this is a great step in saving lives. Another way to fight the drug problem is to educate the public about the dangers of illicit drugs like fentanyl. The Arizona Youth Survey is a survey given every 2 years in Arizona, and in 2022, the survey was given to 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students, of which 51% were Hispanic. The survey is used to identify potential community issues such as guns, drugs, alcohol, and gang violence. According to the 2022 Arizona Youth Survey, when it comes to fentanyl awareness and access, more than a third, or 37% of students, reported they had never heard of fentanyl. 26% of students reported that they had not seen or heard advertisements warning of the danger of fentanyl. 70% of those who had heard of fentanyl reported they think people who use fentanyl are at great risk of harming themselves, and 10% reported that it would be easy or very easy to get fentanyl. In 2018, 3 Arizona community organizations, including Hispanic nonprofit Chicanos por la Causa in Pima County, received a $400,000 grant funding from the Arizona Attorney General's office to educate more than 13,000 middle and high schoolers over the course of 2 years on the dangers of opioids misuse and abuse. This grant also made it possible for parents, teachers, coaches, and counselors to receive training to support students on how to identify opioid abuse.
The use of drugs is fatal, but we as a community can also help by informing one another of this serious topic. If you see someone showing signs of drug abuse, try to help them before it's too late. The more people know about this topic, the more we can fight for justice.
Express yourself.
Okay, before we get to our final presenter, I do want to make a mention that Mita Cuaron has some of her original artwork on display right over here, so you should take a look at that if you've got the time. Our final open mic presenter is Jeremy Glauner, who is going to be doing rhythm and poetry. I believe he's going to be doing one of his own original performances, and then we'll be listening to a recording.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, actually. Ooh, so God bless PCC, and I don't know if Professor Young is here, but hey, there you are. Thank you. God bless. So I know I'm in the right place. God is good because this is definitely a different venue than I'm used to. I rap for the Messiah, the coming Jesus Christ, and we all know what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, he works in his way because the Salvation Army saved my life. My mother and my wife are back there. They got all the ratchet testimony. If you want all the gossip and sauce, go for it. But at the end of the day, everything here is important because it all ties back to, I've experienced all of it. I'm also a graffiti artist, Tucson. I've been in every neighborhood out here from East 29th to South Tucson. My wife's from Hollywood, whatever. But like at the end of the day, man, what's happening is real. And not just in Tucson, but you look at the world news, look at YouTube, TikTok, whatever you want. And we are in strange times, and I love you guys. And thank you for being here. And if no one's told you today, Christ Jesus loves you too. And that's for real. But yeah, so what I'm gonna do is I got a beat that I made. I rap for the Messiah. He's put it on my heart to try to open an annex. Not try, he said, no, you're gonna start. And it's basically doing everything we're talking about here. Think of the boys. I grew up in the Boys and Girls Club in South Tucson. I went to, I did all of that. Summer club, my mom's a single mom, latchkey kids, holler to the latchkey kids. But he's put it on my heart like the School of Rock meets the YMCA, meets the Boys and Girls Club, but with social services and the gospel for hip hop. Because hip hop is the lens that our world, our kids see everything through. Advertisement, you name it. Your fashion, your makeup has a hip hop background to it. It's 50 years old, and that's just the realness of it. I grew up in the ratchetness of hip hop. You know, I was at the Bone and Thug Biggie show when they got shot out here, and they made songs about it. The Bloods were shooting at the Buena Vista Theater, all that good, and no glory to the darkness. But I will tell you, yeah, this is important. Everybody that's here, thank you for being here. Seriously, from the bottom of my heart and the Holy Spirit, thank you. Because you're gonna take this out and you're gonna remember this, even if you don't like it, right? So I'm gonna get up here, I'm gonna have you hit that beat, detergent. I'm just gonna do, and I might be off beat, I'm kinda nervous. Like I said, you guys are not the typical crowd I'm used to. So, yeah, you know, I'm doing, hey, it takes the ratchet to get to the righteous, and saints make sinners. It says that in scripture, so I gotta be careful, right? Amen. We're all children of the Most High. We're as young as He lets us feel. But I go by Saint Exalt. If you guys want to look it up, woo, I don't do this for money. He's got me wanting to monetize for the annex, and I don't even know what that's going to look like. I mean, I've worked in corporate America. I've walked the veil. You know, the Lord's not looking for smarter, intelligent people. He's looking for people that have wisdom. And I don't even call myself that. But this is my therapy. The Salvation Army started it on South 6 years ago. They got shut down bogus style, if anybody knows. The media out here reported them wrong. It was bad. It was a controversy, and it got covered up, just like a lot of things. Like, where's our government, right? Where's the dollar bill? Holla, right? So go ahead and hit it. I'll try to get on beat. So this is called The Message 3.0, and He's put it on my heart that the metaverse and Web 3.0 is where the dollar bill goes. So just get your crypto right, understand what's going on with your wallets, for sure. He wants that message out. But you know, Lord Father God, be with these people, protect them in a hedge of protection with your angels of glory, love, war, information, whatever it takes to get to their hearts, to let them know their love. Yeah. Woo. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Oh, see, I'm on it. Let's see if I can jump on it. You guys got me messed up already. Vibing. 1, 2. Hallelujah. Yeah, the power flowing through ya like ooh ya, and Jesus Christ always gonna move ya. Now do ya think the devil ain't gonna try to fool ya? You're doomed, bruh. Now listen to this message coming to you. Here is prayer and His praise for you lost in a maze. Like a rat run a race when it's trapped in its cage. Fell from His grace when you spit in His face. What it tastes like it's mace, now your soul just ablaze. Lord, speak lightning strike, watch it shake a whole nation. Raise the dead souls in flight, looking for salvation. Scriptures read, hypocrites ignoring revelation. Too late, judgment day, soul condemnation. Lake of fire, burn them souls at that white throne. Flesh drip, that muscle split to that white bone. Repent now, rapture here, got chosen all gone. Why you left all alone in this earth floating space? Where the crows pick your bones with the blood on your face. They got mud on their feet. 4 men they be can torment. Where we at? What the Lord we still see. And 7-headed beasts wanna rule one nation. 7-year warfare and the trials and tribulations. The King of Kings returned 5 crowns on the stag. Rope soaked in blood like a flag or a rag. Name on his legs like a tat or a tag. Sash made of wisdom, Holy Spirit in his hand. He back to take his land. It's his time, it's his place. Watch your fears disappear like some shadows lost his base. Ooh, I'm out of breath now. Ooh. That's pretty much it, though. That's pretty much it. But we can play the version that I actually recorded before I got her. If you guys want to hear it. Thank you. Too much talking before it got me ready. What's that? Big old subway before I came in. I knew that was But the other song that they're gonna play is one that I released on the mini platform, and it's called Band Lab. I'm sure people probably have heard that or rap fame, but it's getting some spins, and I'm just hoping at the end of the day, like I said, that socially, we all need each other, period, at the end of the day. And especially what's going on left, right, it don't matter, right? At the end of the day, there's truth, and the truth never changes. And it don't matter if you go to the Quran, you go to whatever, you go to the Tanakh, you go to the Torah, you go to the Bible, all the great books. I've read Aristotle, I've been there. I have a background in humanities from Chicago. None of that matters. At the end of the day, look at the person next to you and just get out of your own shoes and ask them what's going on in their heart. Because that is not happening, even in under our own roof, in our own bed. And I see that more and more every day in my own family. And my wife and my mom are back there to testify everything I'm saying to. So, did you want to play it's called Grateful Hearts. There you go.
Yeah, Romans 12, 17 through 21.
It's on my heart.
Let's get it, right? I I was dead, he brought me back to life, I call it grateful. He didn't have to, but he kept my paper plate full. Being humble is a product, and I'm very thankful. And my king's blood is in my heart, by the chain full. My heart was hard, and we are products of eternal garden. Well, on our lives, so convenient, like it is Shaman. That's why the devil studies scripture to disarm them. And an Eden check is made, was defeated. And the cycling God sees and needs repeated. Narcissism leads to lust, and pride is just conceited. And the darkness split from light like it is bleeded. Remember, liars always brag because they cheated. You call them friend for now until you get them heated. If they do it to their own people, best believe it. If you on their radar, you probably gonna receive it. So don't front and think they didn't think it. Everyone knows how Scarface go down in the final sequence. Christ coming with a sword crown, I keep on preaching. I was ratchet and he saved this ugly heathen. He must love me, man, cause he kept me breathing. I was dead, he brought me back to life, I call it grateful. He didn't have to, but he kept my paper plate full. Being humble is a product, and I'm thankful. And my king's blood is in my veins and heart by the thankful. My heart was hardened, we all products of this broken world and eternal garden. Want our lives soft and convenient like a shaman, ain't happening.
Let's give one more round of applause to all the open mic performers here.
All right, what a great party, wasn't it? Thank you so much for being here. I want special thanks to Mike Rom, Yolanda Gonzalez, Andrew Couture, Ana Rodriguez, Marta Reyes from Justice for All, Nicholas Bruner from Tenants Union, and the Planning Committee. If the Planning Committee could raise their hands. Thank you so much for all your work. And thank you for being here in this space. And special thank you to the community makers. I'm starting to get emotional because I've dreamt about this for so many years, to bring community makers here. We, again, like I said in the morning, we often hear of the organizers, organizations, right? But we don't often hear of the people doing the work out in the field despite the challenges and despite the risks that they take. The weather,
Can't go.
The environment.
This.
I think he's playing a prank on me. I'm on TV, that's why. But no, thank you to the community makers. I mean, without you, I don't know what this world would be. I'm serious. I mean, again, despite the challenges and the risks that you take, our keynote speakers, talking about cultura, talking about identity, how la cultura cura, and I encourage you to look at your identity. I encourage you to look at your cultura. I encourage you to do something about the issues that impact you. In a lot of my classes, I teach M.A.S, Mexican American Studies and American Indian Studies, and we look a lot at, and I ask my students, what impacts, what affects you, what makes you lose sleep at night, what pisses you off? Think about those things. And I asked in the introduction too that while you're here during the day to really think about what issues impact you and what can you do to bring awareness to these issues. So I encourage you to do that. Look at that. Look at what impacted you, your ancestors, and how we can make a difference together. And again, thank you to the community makers. I look forward to all the work, your continued work. And thank you everyone for being here. And one more thing, before you leave, if you can look at these posters. So these posters are created by some of my students. The 3 ones here at the end. I asked students to create a social movement. What issue impacts you again? What issue would you like to bring awareness to? And they created these posters, they created a logo, they created an organization. One talks about Queer for Art. The second one here talks about mental health illness. And the third one, Stop Femicidios, Stop the Violence Against Women, especially the Mexicanos, right? Again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. for being here and building community. Muchísimas gracias. And now I want to introduce you to Agustin, and he'll be doing the closing ceremony. And it's his birthday.
If everyone can stand and create a circle. I want to take this time to thank all of you for being here today. I pray to the Creator today to give us guidance, to give us knowledge, and to give us the confidence to go out and spread what we learned today out into the community. The circle here represents our sacred root. Our sacred root is our medicine wheel. There are 4 colors in the medicine wheel that represent all races connected around the world, and in the center they all connect. And I want you to look at that because that represents unity. It represents unity among all relations, all of our relations. No matter what background you come from, I ask the Creator that each individual here gets to learn and gets to know who you are, and also to learn someone else's nationality, because I feel that society has lost that. And it's time for us to bring back that humanity, that unity. And I pray to the Creator every day that we have that strength and the confidence to do that. The greatest teacher once told his followers, he said, "We are here not for ourselves, but we are here to change the world." And that's what we need to do, no matter where we come from or who we are. Let's all let go of what we have that stops us and go out there and change the world. And I thank you all because each and every one of you will make that. You guys will change something or someone in your life. I thank you, Creator, for all of this today and for all the knowledge. Please give everyone confidence to go out and to do that, to change the world, because humanity needs it. To all my relations, I thank you all. You all go in peace, be safe, have a safe weekend, and think about everything you have learned here. And May 5th is the National Awareness Day for Missing and Murdered Indigenous. That's in 2 weeks. So take part in any event that's going on in your community and support the indigenous ones that are lost. Support the families that are suffering, who are struggling. And please pray that one day we can all change this. Thank you. Thank you, Creator.